Greetings, brothers and sisters. I'm Professor Spira here with Tony Bali B, and we practice a little something called the Mucusless Diet Healing System. That was first written by Professor Arnold Ehret back in the early 1900s, published in 1920 for the first time. And Mucusless Diet consists of a transition methodology that includes regressively and gradually moving toward mucus-free foods, as well as fasting periods, colon irrigation, other therapies that can help one detoxify, cleanse the system, and change one's physiology and heal on the deepest levels possible. So Tony, what is going on with you? How you doing, man?
Hey, greetings. Oh man, I'm doing good. Just out here in this Michigan coldy, icy weather, practicing the mucusless diet, as you know, and just seeing the effects of transforming myself, and just enjoying the process. I'm glad to be on here today.
Yeah, man. So this is gonna be a little question and answer session, and I got a list of questions. And what I used to do, for the past years, was I'd get a question and then I would answer it in writing, and then I would sort of use that stuff that I wrote and republish that in in other circumstances. And now most of the questions can be found that I get. Some of the questions can be found in my writing somewhere, but I figured it's good to also get this stuff in video form. So yeah. Plus it's fun. I just enjoy getting on here and having the live feed, and really be able to interact with folks and ask questions as we go. And we'll try to field questions if you have them. If you're on the mucusfreelife.com. That's where you want to submit your questions. Is if you put them down there, that I'll check periodically and go ahead and talk about some of those if we can fit it in. So first question is from Tobin. This was left on the Facebook group, the Facebook support group. And to summarize, the question is basically, why do you think that it is during the morning and daytime there is very little need to want to eat, and the time most activity and moving around and responsibilities are tended to, but the nighttime seems like the time we eat the most, and always the culprit of overeating and even binging on mucus-forming foods. Anytime I relapse or even overeat mucusless, it's almost always prevalent at the nighttime hours. What are people's experiences with this? So so this is interesting. I mean, I don't have a definitive answer as to why that is. I mean, I can conjecture and give a couple logical explanations. On one hand, some of that almost depends on your sleep cycle. If you have a sleep cycle where you sleep during the day and work at night, then I would imagine that would be the opposite. So basically, you're going to start feeling some of these cravings, and that thing that you feel, that you're describing there, where you start to get some of the old addictions and some of the old things start to come up, and you start thinking about eating some bad things, and it tends to happen it's the more that you have been up and moving. It's like you said, you're moving, everything's cool, but then toward the end of the day, one, if the kidneys aren't perfect and they're not filtering great, and you've been working and any acids that haven't been filtered out, now that's kind of getting in your system. If you've been eating throughout the day, then that's going to zap your energy, because now your body's trying to get into the digestion mode. So especially when you're in this detox area that we're talking about, because I know some people will be like, well, I know people that they eat large amounts of meat and everything else, and they don't they don't have that. Yeah, but a lot of them are sleeping 9 and 10 hours a day, and so I mean, look, so that's actually a piece to look at, because I know me, I sleep anywhere from 3 to 5 hours a night. If I'm fasting, I only do 3, and I don't set out to do that. That's just what feels natural. I can't, like, I sleep and then I'm up, and so I'm back to work, doing whatever I'm doing, because normally if I'm not doing some music or working on some artistic endeavors, then I'm doing schoolwork, or I'm working with you beautiful people trying to talk about the Mucusless diet. So, uh, and sometimes if I'm at the beginning of a fast, I might sleep a little more. But I think some of that, then, so there's, I mentioned the kidneys, but then what sits on top of the kidneys, the adrenal glands, and that recharging period that most people need. When you talk to people and they're getting into this 8 hours of sleep, and I mean, it's hard for me to conceive, because I never really even did that before the diet. I just didn't sleep that long, and I wasn't a fan of sleep. I didn't like. I mean, it's necessary. It's necessary. I'm not saying that, but I'm not one of those, like, people that it just gets so excited about. Oh, yay, I'm gonna go sleep. Because for me, I like to be productive 24 hours a day. So. And even if I'm resting, because there's a resting period, and I think that's a little more elevated than a sleep period. It's like when you get to a point where you're resting, and the quality of your rest, where you don't necessarily have to go unconscious, but you're kind of in that rest meditative state, and you're getting that same type of regeneration. Now, don't take what I'm saying out of context and try to say, Spira's saying don't sleep. Like, no. I'm saying actually sleep as much as you want. If you can sleep 10 hours and you don't have worldly things, and it's physically possible for you to do that, and you're eating mucusless, then that means you probably need to do that. Use that time to fast, because that's when you're sleeping, you're fasting. I mean, so that becomes, for those that can't fast without sleeping, then you probably need to sleep, because you're fasting, and then that becomes the reason to sleep is fast. You're fasting when you're sleeping, not all this other stuff they're talking about. You're fasting. That's why it's important, because you're fasting. And so a lot of people say, well, I can't fast, and well, if you can't fast, then deal with the transition, and then sleep as much as you can, because you will be fasting while you're sleeping. And as you get cleaner, you'll probably find that you have to sleep less. So that kind of that goes off into sleep, but I think that has a lot to do with this dynamic of why we get hungry later on, is because it's you're starting to get tired, and you actually want stimulation, and so and that's kind of in my experience, because toward the end of the day, it's kind of like, like, man, I really want something. I think that's why dinner and I'd had to do research to see if that is how many different cultures have the late meal as the biggest meal, but that would make sense as to why the dinner or supper time meal, or whatever you call it, is bigger than some of the earlier meals. I think it's only we were talking about the no breakfast plan and some of that, and when Era talked about the no breakfast plan, that big breakfast phenomenon was kind of like, as far as I can tell, it was in American, United States cultural creation, because a lot of places in Europe, they have real small amount for breakfast. I mean, they'll have just like a biscuit and a piece of whatever, toast and jam and tea or something. I mean, they have a very small amount as a breakfast meal, whereas growing up here in the States, bacon and eggs, grits, cereal, pancakes, waffles, that might all be in the same meal at 30 minutes to an hour after you've gotten out of bed. You're already eating all of that stuff, and it's pure stimulant. Eggs. I mean, you're talking just pure pus, and so that's my take on that. What do you got? What do you think,
Yeah.
Tony?
Yeah, man, that's like, just to kind of go over my thoughts about it. Some of it similar to what you said, but I think a lot of it comes into this mental conditioning process where, like you said, dinner tends to be the time where uh, you eat the most. And even, I think some cultures, they might have like lunch is a big meal and then dinner is smaller. But even in that paradigm, it might be like you get more drunk at dinner, or you smoke something, or you watch TV or something like that. Um, so there's this whole conditioning process where the evening is a time where you can be selfish, and the day is a time where you're supposed to work, you're supposed to be a part of a community, and in the evening you can kind of switch into personalized mode, individualistic interests, and so then when the evening time comes, it's like, what can I get into? Like, what bar can I go to? Who can I call and get down with something? And so there's that paradigm, that conditioning process, and I think that plays a big role in this whole thing, because that's something that I've experienced as well. Is I can have like an orange for lunch and be fine, but when it comes time for the dinner, it's like might start with some fruit, then might start with some, or move to some raw salad, might end up putting some steamed broccoli on there. Then if I'm still hungry, I might just like have like a mucus lean meal or something like that with it, or add some toast or something. And uh, the trick is that you start to realize that you're never actually satisfied by eating more. Um, Especially if you're dealing with the veggies and all that, is like, um, sometimes I found that I had to come back around to like some juice in the evening after a veggie meal, because it's like the more you get into the veggies, the more you trigger um, these old habituated patterns where you almost forget that the true thing that your body wants is the fruit sugar.
Mm.
Your body doesn't even want anything else. But the minute those cravings start, it's like you start going back to these old paradigms of, maybe the fat, or maybe the starches and all that stuff. And so that plays a role. And there's physiological things, like you said, the kidneys. Uh, some people say parasites have these like these active hours that come into the evening. But I believe that besides the kidneys and such, I believe that the parasite thing is not really as important as the conditioning process. And that's what I've had in my experience, is like, even if there is parasites or whatnot, the thing that makes me start going into overeating in the evening really is this thing of like, oh, I'm gonna watch a movie and I'm gonna eat, and like, oh, this little salad isn't gonna last for the movie, so let me like let me get into some pasta, or let me get into something else that I can really munch on.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? So you get into all these activities, and it's really something where you can start. This is like a playground for you to start working on that. How can you spread your transition out? So like when you get home, maybe you'll have some water. Like, let me really drink some water now after the day. Or let me have a juice. So it might be like 8 p.m. You just got home, and let me make a juice first. Let me not even, like, I'm craving stuff. Let me just make this juice, drink it, and see how I feel. And then maybe you get into your salad a little bit later. And the last thing I want to say on that is then, Spira, you had a good point about that resting thing. Is like, maybe you just need to rest. Like, take a small walk around the block, come home, lay down, maybe listen to an audio book or something like that, and just really start trying to work with that paradigm, because I think it's a lot more to do with conditioning than actually any kind of like physiological need. It's just when those cravings hit, that machine starts revving up, and you gotta work with it. So
Yeah,
it's definitely an interesting piece.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Just in terms, long-term conditioning, is you can think how long. I mean, just think of it in years. I started practicing the diet when I was 19, So I had been conditioned since whenever I started eating solid food that I'm going to eat at least 3 times a day, if not 5 or 6, after having some snacks and the late night snack and the milk and cookies and that. And then when I got older, then you do the late night White Castle and Taco Bell, 1 a.m. Run, and then you have the run. Okay. But yeah,
no, exactly. It's a conditioning process, and it's not just going to take one day to fix it. Like I'm 3 years in, and I'm nowhere close to like what you've experienced with 12 years. So there's got to be some like leniency with yourself, and just understand like time is a real factor in this thing, but you're growing extremely quickly, much more than we even thought was possible, and so at a certain point it's just like you just like face it, like, okay, this might take me a little bit, but day to day I'm going to work on it.
Yeah, and that's really where you could have a discussion about the everybody likes to talk about the enzymes and stuff. I mean, that's where you could have a good discussion about. Let's talk about that within the context of like Pavlovian. Pavlov, look that up if you've never heard of that before. But that's the conditioning. He did these experiments where he would condition animals to like there's to saliva, like all these different tests. But there was ones where you could ring a bell, and if you created an association with a certain kind of phenomenon, which might be ringing a bell or whatever, and they could get dogs or rats or whatever the animal was, you could get them to salivate, and you could do it purely on making that association, and that's what we've had done over the years, and that's why we have to work so hard to undo this, especially in pus land USA, as I've given the term. Why? Because look, watch TV. We are the result of Pavlovian conditioning by the likes of McDonald's, anybody that's doing these commercials, Burger King, and they have those little, have you had your break today? I mean, that's what they had when I was growing up, and then they had I'm loving it, and all, and so right there, that's like, that's supposed to trigger something in you, because they play it so often, and the way that they present it becomes like natural. Nobody even, with McDonald's, you could see McDonald's ads all day, but if I were to post 1 or 2, like if I was trying to promote the Mucusless Diet book every day, and I post and like in our distribution network on like the Arnold Arendt sites and stuff, if I were to just say like every day, just without any kind of creativity, just like, hey, buy this, buy the Mucusless Diet, like just, in that kind of manner, then people get kind of turned off, by you have to sort of use a different methodology when you're trying to present this level of information to people, something that people actually have to learn and have to do. But when it comes, McDonald's, they just in fact, and you notice this with the way that they sell pus and mucus forming foods. Like, look at that, analyze and look at how silly a lot of those ads are, because they are appealing to your lowest common denominator. They are appealing to that addiction, to that pus and mucus thing, and that pus and mucus thing is silly and stupid, and they have to communicate with you like that. And in one of my videos, I had like this Jimmy Dean sausage thing, and they had this guy in a big in a big sun outfit, and I think in that same video I might have did, there was this ice cream commercial that went viral, and this woman had, or guy, I actually couldn't tell what gender it was, but they had all this ice cream all over their body, and they were like looking all weird, and then they took a spoon and took some off of them and started eating on it and licking it and stuff, and it's like, that's what we're dealing with. There's not a lot of seriousness when it comes to the pus and the mucus. They don't make like serious like this, like this is important. You really need to come eat it at McDonald's. It's kind of like, oh, we're having fun, woo! But then you walk in there, it's like, I mean, McDonald's to me, that's like a prison. That's like walking into McDonald's. Just look at it, it's all gray. A lot of them, they try to make it look all flowery in this facade, but when you really get in there, it's like, it's just so industrialized and gray. It's like, to me, it just feels like a prison or something. And really it is. It is the prison, because you find yourself in there and you think you have control. Like, you think that you made the decision to go to McDonald's. Pavlov. They got you going.
Exactly, right. No, that's a really good point, man. It's we've been trained, just like how they got tons of books about training dogs. Like, we've been trained, and there's been times in my transition where I almost didn't even want to come home, because it's like, when I came home at the end of the day, that's when all the cravings started. That's when all my conditioning to like watch TV and waste my time just started, and so I've had to work with that kind of stuff pretty intensively. And another thing that's interesting is time. Like, a lot of the esoteric stuff and the metaphysics, people talk about time doesn't exist, and it really doesn't. And so what is this whole factor of like 7 p.m. versus 7 a.m.? The only difference is the obstructions in the body. Like, when you start getting cleaner, time starts changing. Time starts not even existing. You're just alive, and but because of the waste in our system, the way that it moves, the way that it causes withdrawals, the way that it causes cravings and eliminations, this creates a pattern of time, like, oh, I'm feeling tired now, or oh, I'm feeling really good now, or now I'm hungry, now I'm eliminating. That becomes the process of our daily time. Otherwise, we would just wake up and be productive and virtuous and seeking like evolution, but even that evolution comes into the factor of time. So, this is really like, we're battling forces of ignorance that are really, really deeply rooted, and karmic in nature. You're talking about, you did the same thing in your last lifetime. And even if you go as far back as to when you were like an animal in one of your lives, you were still living for food. You know what I mean? So it's like, food is this very deeply ingrained pattern, and it's to the point now with me that the fruit is just the same as any of those foods. You know what I mean? Like, if I eat more fruit than I need, like, there's times where I have like some really good tasting fruit. Maybe it's a melon, maybe it's whatever, and it would just taste so good that I just want to keep eating it, even though I know I have no physiological need for it. Mm-hmm. And that becomes a process of like eating more fruit than I need, watching movies, and that bogs me down. Very similar, but not the exact same at all, but very similar, and it just creates that habituated pattern. But transitionally, I embrace that, because I see the evolution, I accept it, and it's like, okay, I'm not always going to be overeating fruit from, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. or whatever, like, so it's interesting in that way as well.
Yeah, no doubt. So so let's move on to the next, and I see there's a couple questions that have come in, so we're gonna cover a few more of these and then try to get to a few of those, and we might forward a couple of them to the next session. There's a couple of them are kind of deep. But so yeah, so the next one I got, how do you know when your detox has simply plateaued? So it depends on what you're going through and what your goals are with the detox and the transition or whatever you're trying to do. If you're trying to overcome a particular ailment, then you pretty much apply the system and you keep trying to dig deeper until the ailment is gone. So for me, I don't necessarily prescribe the Dr. Morris method with that as much in terms of no transition, just jumping in and rolling and then hope, kind of like back up if you need to. Like I like to transition people at least a couple weeks to a month, and then before we really get into some deeper stuff. But again, that's just general approaches that I've found to be effective with most people. Usually, if you have a good 2-week transition, like you're trying to deal with some kind of thing, you got a good 2-week transition, then by that 3rd week, you're ready to do a little, kind of get into some fasting or something a little heavier. But anyway, in terms of plateaued, I mean, to me, it's kind of just comes down again to the symptoms and what your goals are. Because there's always a deeper level. There's never, because a lot of people think that, well, let me do this for a month or a year or a couple years, and then I'll be healed and transformed. And it's like, well, yes, you might be transformed and you might heal what was initially right there the problem, but 5, 6, 7 years down the road, your other weaknesses are going to come up. 10 years, 12 years. A lot of I'm not going to get into it now, but for people that practice the diet long term, we have a concept called the fall, where usually 10 to 15 years into practicing these diets, at some point you start going through your deeper weaknesses, and it's at that point now you're dealing with the Dr. Morris like level, like, okay, now you gotta really get into some serious fasts, and but if you've practiced for a long period of time, there's a method to the madness, as they say. If you practice well and you really mastered the transition process, where you know how to go in and come out, speed things up and slow things down, when you have a serious issue that comes up, you will have cleansed yourself and be so adept at the fasting process that you'll have no problem doing a longer fast that it might take to heal that particular ailment. Because nobody can tell you how long it's going to take to heal any given thing, because that's specific for each person's body. That's just not something you can tell. You can say what it's taken for other people to heal a certain ailment, but each person's situation is very different. So as far as plateau point, I mean, there's some with the transition methodology. Sometimes you want the plateaus, like you want to find a plateau where you can eat, feel comfortable, and you're on the transition diet. So whether that's the mucusless and the cooked mucusless levels, or if it's the raw mucusless levels, or if it's mucus lean, or whatever, you at some point when you're not doing intensive fasting, you actually want to find those plateau points and wear them out. Use it, jump into them, and but continue to take steps forward. So you hit a plateau point and you're eating, you kind of in a groove that's comfortable. You want to feel good, so you eat in that groove. But then you do your 2 and 3 day fasts, and then that's going to kick you up a notch. So then the next time when you come back down, maybe you're not don't go all the way back down to where you were. You're a little bit higher up, and You know, and so for most people, unless you have chronic illnesses off the rip, then I'm suggesting getting into the transition diet and easing yourself into the deeper levels of detox. If you already have ailments that you're trying to overcome, which I know a lot of you are, you know, then we have to talk about the deeper stuff. But for me, the transition still applies. You can take 2 weeks out of your life and really allow yourself to transition. You know, the guilt-free transition. Hey, there's a term. There's a there's a term that I could coin, the guilt-free transition. You know, Mucusless diet, but you know, and that's when you start talking about the herbs and the fruit fasting and all that kind of stuff. But give yourself a couple weeks or even better, a month to really transition. So when you come back off of those higher levels, you don't have to go all the way back to where you were, because a lot of people, because you're not only transitioning your body and your physiology, you're also transitioning your mind and your mentality. And so you can have you can eat fruit forever and feel wonderful for a period of time and well, not forever, but for a period of time, and but if you haven't really transitioned your mentality, the relapses can be brutal. And I've seen it. We can sit here and make a list of people that were gung ho, and that's why I'm cautious about some of the the folks like that will say never, because we always say never, because I've seen too many people that have been gung ho, and especially kind of in the raw foods side of things. You know, they'll be like gung ho, and they'll be like, yeah, I'm never gonna eat good food again. I'm this and I'm raw, you know, and they're just. And it's almost like that intensity is based on stimulant, as opposed to sort of rational thought of like, well, how long did you transition into being raw? Like, I did it overnight. I'm cool, you know. It's like, and some people can, and that's beautiful. You know, if you have that, you know, physiological excellence to do that, then and mentally you were able to do that, then beautiful. You know, you probably transitioned in a past life or something. You know, so by the time you were ready now, you know, you didn't have to, you know, deal with it. But the most of the people that I've worked with and that I've seen, they underestimate the importance of the transition, and so they don't do it, and they get beat up. And that's part of the learning process. So, you know, so from that perspective, it's all good because it's just learning. But what we're trying to do here with the education is to give you the tools of transition so that you can maybe not go, make the same mistakes or suffer some of the same unnecessary consequences that some other folks have. And I want to see people going back to like going all the way back in like a paleo diet, which has happened. And I won't name any names, and I'm thinking of a couple of people in my head right now that was like hardcore, like they were the type of people that would criticize somebody for eating a piece of cooked food. They might criticize a Mucusless diet practitioner for eating some cooked mucus-free food. And then almost overnight, they had a fall, and they, you know, it felt terrible. It was probably going through, you know, the detox or whatever, but it just hit them a certain way. All their weaknesses came out, and the next day they were talking about, I'm on paleo now, and they were trying to tell people in like raw food groups. They were basically fighting with them until they got kicked out of the group, trying to tell them like that's the wrong path. Like, and this person had been preaching that hardcore, and then on a dime they changed, and they were 180 degrees in the other direction, talking about, you know, let's eat raw meat and whatever. And so that's where my passion for that it comes from, and the caution that I put out there for people comes from, you know, having been doing this for 12 years and seeing dozens of people go through that, and hearing the stories of Brother Air, who's watched people for 40 years and seen, you know, probably hundreds, you know, maybe, you know, hundreds or at least 100 of those kind of cases. Because why? Because they didn't respect the transition, you know, and that's why we talk so much about it, you know.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. You know, I think that you know, in some ways I have trouble understanding like the exact question that the person's asking. Um, just in terms of like what they mean by plateau. Like, does that mean they have no more waste to eliminate,
I
or
think
does
they're what
like what
they're
does it?
in other words, they're asking at what point do I know when I need to kick it up a notch, or at least that's the way I interpret
Oh,
it.
okay.
When do I have
Yeah.
to get more aggressive? Like if I'm eating nothing but fruit and doing sort of a fruit fast, or what we would call a fruit fast, uh, then at what point at what point does that fruit fast not go deep enough, and you have to do fruit juice? You know, at what point does does subacid fruit juice not go deep enough, and you need fruit juice, or you need a lemon juice fast, you know, or you need a water fast or dry fast or whatever, you know. Now I don't promote dry fasting in most cases. It's a tool, but most people aren't ready. But I'm just saying, you know, this is the palette that we have to work with. So so I think that's what he's saying, and basically,
Okay. Yeah.
to me,
Um,
it just comes back around to uh, your symptoms, you know, your symptoms and your goals, you know, what you're trying to do.
yeah. Right. You know, I think that what I can add to it is just to say that um, on the surface level, the transition diet means transition to mucusless dieting. But as you just described, you know, there's so many levels to the transition that can go way beyond just getting mucusless for a period of time. Um, and that's what a lot of people don't understand about the mucusless diet is like, how can we be talking about the highest level things? And at the same time, we're talking about this most rational step by step process, you know, and um, like one way that I could describe it a little bit is like, let's say you come into the system with some kind of like chronic inflammation in your elbow or some joint. You know, we know that there's mucus and pus filling up that joint. That is the inflammation. That is the obstruction and waste in the joint. So let's say you do some time mucusless, throw in some fast, and it's like, wow, my pain is gone. I feel great. Um, like 2 years later, that inflammation could come back, but that would be a release of much deeper obstructions, and maybe your body has a pattern of building waste in that area. So the cleansing is not always a one-time go. It's like you get in there, you work it out, and it gets better, but then it might happen again, and then you work it out, and then each time you're actually cleaning your whole physiology of mucus, pus, waste, and toxins. And this just happens to be your area of symptoms. Um, and so that kind of becomes a signal for you to like know when you should dig deeper. Um, but even on another level, like without having to wait for symptoms to come up, um, we know that mucus is not true human food. So let's say you're doing a mucusless diet, but you keep going back like periodically. Let's say it's every week or every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, you go back to a mucus option. Um, Fundamentally, the transition off of mucus forming foods is going to take you to a point where you don't go back to mucus. So even if you go back to mucus once a year, um, you still have more work to do. Um, so it's just really like there really is no plateau really. Um, it's like you still got to keep going, and um, So let's say eating cooked mucusless, you know that you're not digging very deep. Like I feel that way sometimes because my cooked mucusless period often includes like sweet potatoes or some cooked acorn squash or something like that. And that stuff is good, but it's heavier. It's a little bit more dehydrating in a way because it's cooked food. And so I always like go to the cooked mucusless phase for a little bit, but I always plan to go to the raw mucusless phase. Um, so it's a never-ending transition. Like you could be raw on fruit for a year, and you still might come back to some cooked broccoli a year later. Um, and you just keep on working with the system. You know what I mean? It's like life. It just keeps progressing. There's no stopping point where it's like I'm here and I'm 100% raw or I'm 100% whatever. It's not even like that because we were born into mucus eating. Like you've already eaten bacon, you've already eaten pork and beef and all that stuff and dairy. So we got so much work to do. It's just ridiculous. Like how can I say that I'm mucusless or something like that where it's like 10 years ago I was eating meat? You know what I mean? It's just not, it's not really that sophisticated because of the level that we were already born into. So, you're never really like plateauing.
Yeah, yeah,
You're just working, and when you need to chill, like the last point on that is like when you do feel like, oh, I need to like stay at a level for a second. You just do that and stuff until you feel the inspiration to keep on going. But
yeah, and I'll clarify because we're saying the same thing, but kind of different because I
yeah,
sort of address like because it's a concept. So the plateau is a concept, and I use that concept within the context of transition diet because I find that to be a useful concept because there's points where you find something that's comfortable and that is also slowly and gradually improving your physiology and moving you closer to being mucus free. So I call that a plateau point. When you find a groove, you can and you wear out the groove as we musicians say, or they say in funk circles. You wear out the groove. So you find a groove and you just do that. Like if you find a groove and it's and
right.
you're cleansing yourself, but it's not too aggressive, but it's not too slow, and you find that groove, wear it out. Just eat. You're eating in that. You're doing that mode, stay in that mode, and then and then you throw a little fast in there and see what. Then you throw your 2 to 3 day fast in there and you see what that does. And then you come off of that and you find that groove again. So you always want to be grooving. You know what I mean? Like to put it as we would say within musical terms, at least with what cool musicians would say, it's got to be grooving.
Yeah, man, I see what you're saying now, and to add on to that a little bit, it's like a lot of people don't realize that like when you take the nutrition concept out of the thing, um, you you don't have to go chasing these like variety of options all the time. So like if you have a salad that you like, just like what you're saying, if you have a salad that you like, you can have that every day for dinner. You know what I mean? For days or weeks or months or years, whatever, and so like mucus-free was what I mean, like a mucus-free salad. And that's something that I advise people to do when they message me. I'm like, do you have any mucusless salad that you like? And if not, I suggest you start trying, you know what I mean? Start really trying lots of things, just like almost like you're like really like searching through the encyclopedia, like just try everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just try it until you're
that's
like,
the research, but the thing about
that's
that
the
is
research for real.
That's fun. That's supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
That's what's supposed to be fun about this. Like you get to explore. Like Brother Air told me, when I was getting into the diet, it was like, you know, with the fruit and vegetable kingdom, you have so much more diversity. When people say stuff like, well, won't I get tired eating the same thing all the time? Well, I don't get tired eating the same thing all the time because I like to find that groove and wear it out. But if I did feel like I got bored, there's way more variety in fruits and vegetables than there is in meat. Because in
Oh yeah,
meat, you're
definitely.
and look at this. The perceived variety that you think you have with meat is based on vegetables. Different combination of herbs to create different tastes. Your herbs and spices, you know, and then you throw in some vinegar-based sauces, and that's your variety. It's still beef, chicken, fish is in the majority. Then if you live other places, maybe dog, cat, buffalo,
Right.
venison, deer. But I mean, you know, meat is meat. It's like you know you have
Goldfish.
goldfish. You know, so yeah, maybe there's little taste patterns that are different there, but you know that's less diversity than you would have with, say, you know, just vegetables. There's a ton of different types of vegetables and different, you know, all these different things, and that, you know, they all taste real different. You can make, you know, prepare them different, or eat them raw or whatever, you know. So there, when you open yourself up to that, it's a lot more fun, and there's a lot more exploration that you can get into in the, you know, in the fruits and vegetable world, and you know, so yeah, so that's something to think about there. So let's go on to the next question here. So okay, so we've already been talking about transition, and I don't necessarily want to dwell on this one too long, but there was a bit of controversy in the Professor Arnold Ehret Mucusless Diet Healing System Facebook group forum, and somebody that's been, they said they were, I'm not going to mention any names or anything, but someone that said they've been a vegetarian for a while, and they're kind of been researching the mucusless diet, asking a lot of questions, just seeing if it's for them, and you know, and trying to get some insight into what's going on, and they came on there, and they announced that they had a relapse, and they had eaten some meat, and and then there was some responses, and some of the responses were from sort of the some of the vegan folks that are, you know, that really promote the like the animal welfare, and I'm on board with that, but I'm also in the transition, and part of the Mucusless Diet Healing System is the only system that has the breadth that it has, to where you can systematically and permanently take any meat eater, no matter how deep their addiction is, and if you apply the principles, no matter how minute or slow you apply those principles, then they can eventually transition off of meat. They can eventually transition off of grains and starches. They can eventually transition to becoming mucusless if they stick to the transition in the program. You know, I don't know why this came to me, but just, you know, in the concept of why, I kind of don't want to make this parallel, but it's in my head. You know, but the concept of what, you know, capitalism in theory is, you have a product, you make some money, and then you don't just go spend all that money on amusement park and fun. You put that money back into the business, grow it bigger, make more money. You put more money back in, and so that kind of give and take relationship, in terms of you cleanse yourself a little bit, you take a step in the right direction, cleanse yourself a little bit, and as Brother Arrow say, the universe will take 2 steps towards you. So you just want to change, and you start doing what you can do, and then you capitalize on that. Capitalize on that little bit of cleanliness that you have received. And so then it becomes just more of a mentality of always moving forward. So it's not like getting in a rocket ship and going way forward only to fall back to earth. It's like I'm gonna take a step. Brother Air say this isn't a run. This isn't even a walk. This is a crawl. You know what I mean? This thing is a crawl, because we are some of the only, the few people that are really, are really honest with ourselves about how filthy we are, as a species, as humans. And so with that, there's no reason to really to beat ourselves up. All we got to do is let's just focus on the transition. If you're more advanced, you're more advanced. Brother Air's doing 15-day dry fasting periods, and he's been fasting and doing intermittent dry fast and then some juice days for the past 3 months. He's practiced the Mucusless diet almost 40 years. But people don't talk about 10 years into the Mucusless diet when he got strung out for an entire year on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches on toast. And so for the raw foodists, that would be heresy to think that 10 years in you would have to take a step back to something like that. Now for me personally, I wouldn't be able to do that, because that's not something physiologically my body would let me do, go back to that. But that don't mean that there's other mucus forming things that Brother Air didn't necessarily mess with that I go to in my moment of mucus lean eating. But I work it into what I do. I work it into my system. So I control the process. I control taking that step back. My body don't force me to do it. I'm like, if I see that it's time, I go on ahead and take that step back. And because I've cleansed myself in the way I do, my body pushes me back forward. Like, nah, dog, that's it. Like okay. It's like, no, we ain't going back there for too long. You get 1 or 2 days doing that, and then you're gonna go back forward again. And that is what I call permanent change, because my body is running the show. Not my addictions and my mental mess that seems like almost even longer to deal with, because your body might be way more advanced than your mind is able to do. In terms of when that addiction starts coming back, and you start thinking like, what if I eat that, or what if I eat this, and it starts coming back. So anyway, again, we're talking about transition, and it's the same broken record that you will hear us just talk about over and over again. Now, what happened on the actual forum, there was that I guess I ought to go ahead and address, was just there was a little bit of fighting, that, kind of maybe not fighting, but argument that came up, and I pride myself on having kind of helped create the most diverse plant-based community online, and we're the most diverse in terms of racial diversity, ethnic diversity, diversity of religious and spiritual belief systems. Try to go find a plant-based community that has more diversity than us. I would be interested. Send me a link to that group, because I'll take a look, because our thing is very unique, because most groups that I've seen are segregated in some way, in terms of either race or sort of everybody has the same spiritual beliefs or backgrounds, or everybody is sort of in tune with a certain dogma. Like if you go to a raw food site, there's certain raw food sites, if you talk about cooked foods once, even cooked mucus-free foods, you get kicked out the group. So that's fine if that's what they want to do. I didn't want to have an authoritarian type of group where every time somebody's saying something that I don't believe in, like I'm kicking people out or I'm deleting threads. I try to give a really long leash in terms of or maybe not, leash is in the right term, but a large amount of leeway, that's the word, to to let people really work these things out, and let everybody have their say. My thing is, once you make your point, that probably should be it. You don't have to keep, and that would cut down all the arguments. Because I'm not saying don't make your point. If you are passionate about a point and or opinion, say your piece. But then that's that. Like, you've said your piece. If you look at the way I comment on there, I look at what's being said. I say my piece. And that's it. Like, I don't have to go in a back and forth. I don't have to try to convince somebody to see it my way or this. It's like, this is my opinion, and and that's it. There's so outside of that, yes, there's a couple topics that I don't let be in the forum because they're not conducive to Mucusless diet philosophy, Arnold Ehret's work, my work. So I don't allow that. But it's only like 3. It's like 2 or 3 or 4 topics that if they pop up, I will ask folks to just not talk about that on the group. And that's still a lot less than most groups have. Because most groups will have a lot longer list of things that you can and can't do in the group. So I just kind of wanted to make that point. And basically, like I said in the thing, with those kind of back and forth argument things, if somebody's out of line, then I step in and I say it. And there was somebody that I thought went over the line, and I came in and said it, and that person was like, okay, well, cool, but then the other person kind of started coming back, and so then I had to kind of come back in and say again, like let's just, say your opinion, make your point, but then let's move on with life, because you're not going to change each other's opinions in that manner. It's like Brother Air said, take what you need and leave the rest alone. So that goes for anything. I mean, you take what you need, what resonates with you, what makes sense, and leave the rest alone. What happens most of the time that I've observed with a lot of the stuff, some of the stuff that I put out, is the first time people listen to it, they have that opinion like, man, that dude's kind of, no, I ain't doing that. And then they go about with life. Then next time they get cold and flu-like symptoms, they get a cold, they have a meat relapse, the dairy relapse, they go through something, and then they start thinking, you know what? Maybe he wasn't crazy. Maybe all that talk of transition and that talk of lemon juice enemas, maybe that wasn't so as far-fetched as I thought it was. Like, I thought I could do this thing without that kind of stuff. Like, I could just be raw, no enemas, no detox, no nothing. And and I'm just using that as an example because I've dealt with a lot of that, folks like that, and then they come back, and then they're like, well, remember when I said that I would never eat cooked foods again? Well, what were those mucus-free cooked items you were talking about? Maybe I should take a step back to that, So that's what that is. I mean, that's just how this thing works, and how until there's more and more people that are really on board with what we're doing in that long-term transition, that the information can sort of, by mitosis kind of get out there, then, that element will be there. But
yeah, I wanted to add on that, like, a lot of times we lack vision, you know what I mean, and that's critical because, like, first of all, if they're on the Arnold Ehret forum, they're already thinking about getting off meat, so you don't, or dairy or whatever, so you don't really have to push the issue so much, you know what I mean. It's not like you're proving to somebody that they should get off the stuff. It's like they're already contemplating that, they're already pursuing that. And one of the greatest visions to me is, like, I look forward to a time where pus-forming foods become talked about the same way crack addiction gets talked about. And I love to hear somebody make a relapse story and to frame it in that way. because, and that's something that I tried to do in the past. Actually, I made a relapse video and such, because it would just be great if, like, on YouTube there was like millions of videos of people talking about, like, I relapsed on meat. You know what I mean? Because that's not really going on like that. And so, or like I relapsed on mucus, like that's even higher level, and relapsed on cooked food and stuff like that, or relapsed into veggies. You know what I mean? Whatever. But we got to have that vision. You know what I mean? And so people get that one track minded pursuit, and it really lacks, like, the understanding of the total transformation of society. And so that's my piece on that, is just keep the vision clear, and know where this stuff is leading to. If somebody says, like, um, I relapsed on some meat, or I ate some dairy or whatever like that, if they're in, like, these kind of circles, you don't really have to bash them. You know what I mean? The thing that can really take them somewhere is to say, wow, I'm impressed with what you've done so far. If you want some more tips on maybe how to overcome that relapse, like, just let me know. But other than that, like, you're on track, and
Well, and
you're doing a good job.
and here's my thing, because there's a line, and here's my
Yeah.
line with that kind of thing, because it's not all, because there's that, especially if somebody's coming to you the first time they come to you and they've had that relapse and that kind of stuff, and then you give them the advice that they need, and the advice I gave was lemon juice enemas, because I think this particular person
Yeah. Right.
was resisting that. And so I used a personal example, because that's how I got off of meat, because I was doing the same thing. I'd go a good week or two, and then I'd have a piece of meat, and then go another week,
Yeah.
and it wasn't until I started doing the lemon enemas where I really started cleaning out my gut. And
You got to get aggressive. You do.
yeah, so the point I was going to make is that if the person came back 6 months later, and they saying the same thing happened, and they still didn't try some of the things that people recommended, especially the enemas piece, then that's when I would then start being like, well, wait a minute here, because what you doing, so there's a line, because you have to be serious, and if you're gonna go down this road, then you go down this road. This is not everybody's ready for this road, and that's fine, because I don't begrudge anybody or anything like that. But if you're going to engage in this thing, then engage in this thing. Really see what it is for yourself. Don't take our word for it, or and definitely don't bash it until you've done it and tried it, because you have nothing to you have nothing to base that on. If you're gonna say, well, criticizing something before you even do it, that doesn't make any sense. So there's, you can be skeptical, but you also have to be courageous, because it's 2015, and that's what it is. It's courageous. It's courageous to take your health into your own hands, because again, Pavlovian dog, we've been conditioned that it's normal to to go get surgeries and to take pills. So to do an enema and to fast a little bit and to eat some fruit and to eat a salad to begin to overcome your ills, they've made that out to be insane, when they've made taking out somebody's appendix, or giving somebody some kind of hormone pills to be totally normal. Let's give our our 15-year-old young ladies hormone pills. Let's give like that's normal. Here, just take these. Just, I don't know, take them the rest of your life if you want. Let's make something that's supposed to be for older gentlemen, or gentlemen at whatever age that are unable to get an erection. Let's make something like that. Let's make a commercial where we actually say in the commercial, if your erection lasts longer than 9 hours, please see your physician. So that's normal.
Exactly.
Like, look at how normal that is. It's
Yeah,
on your television.
exactly.
It has happy people. Like, they do them the way I kind of I hate that, but at the same time, it's like it shows you where we're at. That the same thing, the Pavlovian conditioning. They show you pictures of the happiest people on earth. Talking about like, they're walking around and it's like, and then they'll say what disease they have, like,
Right.
and either, first
Still
of all, these
smiling,
actors,
still laughing,
yeah,
like
still
walking through a
smiling,
field of flowers.
yeah, it's and then at the end, once you've been sucked into the visuals, then they start giving you all this, side effects may include erection
Right.
that lasts longer than 9 hours, and your penis might fall off, and it's like,
Right.
it's like, are you,
No, it's real like that,
but
man.
look at how they
Exactly.
normalize that. Look at how they normalize that, and you want to look at us like we're some kind of crazy lunatics, because we're talking about distilled water, lemon juice, enema bag, colon irrigation, and we're supposed to be the ones insane. But again, everything's backwards. It's bizarro world. Everything is backwards. The people that are in power are the sickest among us. We have the leadership are the sickest among us, because they tend to be the ones that even want to do that. That they have that kind of narcissism, have that kind of ego to want to put themselves in that position to where they can have power over others. But we're letting that happen because we're not. We're sick. So sick leaders for sick people. So until we get ourselves together, all these things that people want to change in terms of our world and and all that kind of stuff in society and things, we got to get ourselves together. I mean, period. Like, we got to get ourselves clean and together, and then we can start talking about a society. But right now, I mean, this ain't it. This ain't it, and it's gonna take a scrapping, as I like to, my favorite word. It's gonna take scrapping a lot of things to make that kind of stuff right, But it's not ever gonna be right until you have the physiology piece together. So any revolution you talking about, or any wanting to change the system and society and stuff, until you have the physiological piece intact, there's no dice. It ain't gonna happen. So let's roll on to the next question. Is it possible to transition while working on a physically exhausting job, not being able to take off every time a weakness comes on? So and I know this was actually addressed by a lot of people. This comes from the forum, and so there was a lot of examples of people that were like, hey, I did this, and people that practice a diet for long periods of time that also did, various forms of manual labor, or kind of demanding jobs, and it's possible, and it's just about the transition. Again, if you if you need to have that mucus lean meal, you eat that mucus lean meal, but the thing about practicing the diet on any level is, when you do get honestly sick, like other people take sick days, where you take fasting days, so your sick days turn into fasting days, because you're not going to go grab a bunch of medicine or a bunch of whatever to suppress your symptoms. You know what to do when the elimination comes. So in some cases, for people that are on an incredibly long-term transition, then that becomes the way that they at least know what to do when things get bad, and and I respect that. I mean, for me, there is a level of wanting to try and transform your lifestyle and everything to the point where and even that's a transition, because I'm not telling you like, well, quit your job, and I'm saying you might want to start looking at some other options. So in a couple years, maybe you can transition into something that is a bit more in line with with mucus-free living, and so that's and I'm doing that in terms of I'm not going to be living up here in this, it's like 6 degrees outside right now and snow on the ground. That's not going to last much longer. So I'm in the process of making things happen so that I can, in transitioning my life and my lifestyle, so that at some point in the near future, I can make that move to someplace more rational for me. I will migrate, as many peoples have done in history. When things no longer work where you're at, groups of people have migrated to greener pastures. And so, but that's the mentality that it might not happen in a year or 2 years, maybe it's 10 years, maybe it's 20 years, but it's a mentality that you are going to transition all aspects of your life. So I'm sharing where I'm at with it. And to me, it's the mentality sometimes is better to have than whatever it is that you got to deal with what you got to deal with. You got kids, you got mortgage, you're plugged into the system. You're dealing with these things that are real, and it's real life stuff. So I'm not gonna be one of these people that gives you that bill of that whole kind of just envision it and it will happen and things will come and just do it. You just gotta do it. Like, man, life is real, so I get that. There's things, people taking care of their elders, family members that have no interest in the diet, yet they're on their way, on their last leg, and it's tearing you apart, watching it, knowing that you have information that could help them, and they're not about it. So I mean, this is real life stuff, and that's what for me the foundation of the Mucusless Diet is about. Is in 2015, how bad do you want to do this? How bad do you want to be here? You know what I'm saying? Like, how bad do you want this? Because it's not put on a silver platter for you. This is the one thing that you had to be creative. Sometimes you got to be creative about your lifestyle and how you can make things work. Because if you have the determination to do this and you have the conviction, you can make it work with any job. If your mentality is that eventually I'm going to transition into things that are more applicable to where I'm at. Because going down this path, you have to be willing to transform as a person. So your personality might change a lot. Your physiology is going to change a lot. Things that you enjoy are going to change. A lot of people don't want to do that. They're not willing to. They don't want to change that drastically to where stuff that used to be fun is no longer fun. For me, that was what was fun. Like, I love changing. I love exploring new avenues of reality with my new physiology. And I'll have a new, sort of a new physiology every 2 or 3 years. So I get to explore all the time. Things change out rapidly because of the way I practice a diet. Other people change a lot slower than that because they don't necessarily practice a diet like I do. But, so for me, it's all good. You find where you get in. It can be done. There's plenty of case studies of whatever circumstance you're in, it can be done. So that's not an excuse. That's just not that's not gonna be where it's at. So it's more, do you want to do it? Do you want to not go through a lot of the pain and suffering that is considered to be normal within society, and going down this other road.
Yeah, exactly, man. I agree with what you're saying, and my piece on that is like, yeah, it can be done, and you just have to know yourself. You just have to be honest with yourself, and like you said, you have to be like down for this thing. You know what I mean? You have to really like, how much can you put this above everything else? And that's just an interesting concept in itself, because like money, shelter, all that stuff, like, can you put your health above all of that? and allow everything else to fall into place as it will. Um, and just that's the mentality you need. I'm not talking about like throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm talking about just mentally put this thing up there, and then be honest with yourself. Like know how your body works. Like, do you need some juice for breakfast, or do you need to not eat? You know what I mean? Until you're like 3/4 of the way done with your day. You need to know how your vitality is working based on your level of obstruction. And so just know those things, try some things, and definitely you can transition once you know what you're doing. You have a general idea of your physiology, and you look at your work schedule. Like, okay, this is my daily schedule. These are the times that I'm free. These are the times that I have to be working. And you can fit your transition in that. You know what I mean? And so that's my piece, is that, yeah, it can be done. And I just agree that that's no excuse. Nobody on the diet that I've ever seen has used that as an excuse. You know, you can't get through this world and practice this thing if you're willing to put excuses ahead, because the whole world is anti-mucusless. So if you wanted to find excuses, you could find excuses all day, like, oh, my family cooks around me, so I can't really practice it, or oh, my parents want me to eat dinner with them, or my wife, like, she gets mad if we don't go to restaurants and all that stuff. Like, none of those things are excuses. So you just fit it. It's so unique. You know what I mean? You just have to look at your transition, and the only defining factor is your seriousness about this thing. That's the defining factor that's going to allow you to transition in any environment.
Yeah, most def. So next issue, which also was talked through on the forum, but I'll chime in, is the issue of making the Professor Arnold Ehret Mucusless Diet Healing System forum private, and on there, Tony wrote a nice response, because I've had this conversation a million times over the years, and the original group was private, and it was first there when there was 10 people in it, and when I used to ask a question, log into another account with some weird, some name I made up, and then answer my own question. Back in those days, the group was private, and then there started to be more people that group, because the group has been around. I think I first tried to do the group maybe 2007. It wasn't too long after I got on Facebook, period. Because I had stayed away from it, and then some of the people I was with at college were into it, so I might have got on Facebook. It might have been 2006, 2000. Yeah, I think maybe 2006-ish is when I first got on it. It wasn't too long that I then was like, well, let me create a group and try to see if I can get people come in here and talk about the Mucusless diet. And at that time, it was slim pickings, because they had just closed down what had been a forum online that was the old Arnold Ehret Club, and that was run by Alvin Last, who at that time owned Ehret Publishing. And so they wanted something that was like $25 a year, I think that's what it was. So you paid $25 a year, and then you got the Ehret Club newsletter, and you had access to this forum. And the forum, it had there was a lot of people that had posted in there and stuff, but it was mostly people that had just joined the forum. They might have posted up some questions that they had, but nobody really responded and answered, because nobody was really engaging, at least by the time I was in there. And so there was maybe a handful of people. There was like 5 or 6 active people that were in that group, and some of those people I formed friendships with and things. But that was but overall, the group, you know, there was some people in it that really weren't hardcore erratists. You know, even some of the folks that might have been running things, they were kind of on other stuff and not necessarily all the way into arid. And so when I joined the group, it was kind of like I started throwing these bombs out of like, you know, this community of Eridists in Cincinnati, and folks that have been practicing this thing for 30 plus years and doing these, you know, 9.5 month long juice fasts and lemon enemas and all this stuff. So people were just like overwhelmed, like, dang, okay, we got someone in here that's really, really doing this thing. And so, you know, I started getting questions. I started working with people, and some of that stuff you can see in Spira Speaks, you know, the book that I released. Some of those early conversations on those forums. So eventually, that, you know, I stopped paying the $25 for that, and I think that ended up getting phased out anyway. And then I started the group on Facebook, and it's been a long process of people gradually joining, you know, people gradually checking it out, and then several years ago, when I decided that I was really going to be serious about promoting the Mucusless diet to the world, I was like, you know what, this needs to be a public group. And because every time someone posts, their friends are seeing it, and we don't have the luxury of being able to be private. You know, if this is already private. The Mucusless diet, there's already, you know, such a small number of people in the world that even know that it exists and know anything about it. This is the most private lifestyle that you probably can find. And so if your goal is like mine, where you're trying to put this information out there, then it makes sense to have a public forum that's 100% public. Historically, you know, and I look at the forum, you know, I really take the forum serious, because I look at the history, and if you know your Greek history, and you know, study the whole, you know, Greek philosophers and that kind of thing, you know, there's the tradition of the public forum, which is a space for people to come together, and they work on questions and ideas, and this becomes the basis for a dawning of a new community through dialect, through dialogical interaction. You have the transformation and the literal invention of new ways of life, new ways of thinking, and so I saw the power of a forum, and that the more public, the better, you know, because for people, there is a level of in 2015, you do have to have courage to practice the Mucusless diet. There's a courageousness and an openness that you're gonna have to have. You know, there's only if you're trying to figure out how to do this thing. Then you know, secondly, that's the best way for people to learn that I've seen is when groups of people are talking about something. It gives it credibility. There's not going to be a whole lot of folks that know what it's like. Maybe you will know what it's like within your circle of people, but with what I was trying to do online, I was the only person that was really seriously talking about Mucusless diet, at least in the English language. You know, there's folks in Italy that were talking about it, but in a couple other languages. But in English, I was it. You know, once Alvin retired and he was no longer really doing the stuff with his website, I was it. And when you're the only one talking about something, then socially it's lacking. You know, there's something missing in terms of the educational process, because people learn best through this dialogue process. So the actual curriculum or pedagogy, if you will, would be you get somebody, they see people talking about this, and immediately there's this social draw, because it's like, oh wait, what? Like, they're talking about something that I don't know anything about. People don't like to be left in the dark. People don't like to that's why there's so much you know, secret societies and all that. There's so much obsession around this things that are secret. People want to be a part of something like that. Like, oh, there's some privileged information over there. Let me check that out. And so if groups of people are sort of talking about this stuff that they've never seen before, having these conversations that are like, what? What are they talking about? No such thing as calories. No such thing as nutrition. What? Like, I've never even heard of that type of thing before. When they see that, they want to investigate. So maybe at that point they go and get the book, and they read the book, and then they're like, oh, this kind of makes sense. Well, let me try to have some conversations with some of these people. Let me ask some questions. Now they're in. Now that, okay, they join the group, and they say, okay, I read the book, I have some questions. Boom. Now you're dialoguing. And then somebody else sees that dialogue, and they do the same thing. And now you're talking about a grassroots way of not only getting people this information, but they're creating communities. They're developing a culture. And that's what I was interested in trying to foster and focus on, was this cultivation of a new reality based on Mucusless Diet Healing System. Because there's just nothing else that is like this. There you have these others, kind of things that's on the side, but this is a very unique way of life and thinking, that is, that deserves its own piece. So basically, what I know what Tony has said was, was talking about. There's a few other people that are making some other groups and that kind of thing, and if somebody wanted a private group, then to make it. Because what I basically was going to do, what I saw is at one point we did make a private forum on the website that I have, and this was like a couple years ago, but not enough people joined, and by that point I was spreading myself too thin, because I'm running like several groups on Facebook, then I'm trying to run a blog and a website and do this, and it was just like, oh, this is too much. So I need to consolidate the places that I'm going to be, and really interact at. And so that's why I was, okay, the forum for right now is public. And at one point I brought it to people, and they was like, and then most of the people said, well, let's keep it public, but right now I think it's growing in a good way, because the people that are finding it are serious. They're serious about the system, and so so I like the growth. Eventually, I'm probably create a private group, and it's gonna be a thing where I will invite the folks that I know are super serious. I thought about creating groups that you subscribe to, for a couple bucks a month or something like that. The subscription groups, because that's popular out there. There's a lot of folks that people, I think the Raw Bros, don't they have a page? You have to pay something like $10 a month or something to be a part of their forum, something like that. So I don't know much about those guys. So. Right. So there's those things, but for right now, like we said before, this is a situation where people that have that's just like no money, that's dealing with like coming from the street. Not that I'm from the streets, but I come from I know that element, and don't have money. have a little resources that I have to figure out ways to stretch, but I have a vision and a passion to get this thing out here, and the people that I respect have similar stories. I mean, Dr. Morris has similar stories, because he didn't have no money, and he just basically was like, all right, I'm gonna put together a health food store and do herbs and talk naturopathy and sell some books, and he did that. I think I guess it was the 70s when he did that, and then his thing grew into where he was, because there was a need for the information that he had to share with people, so he started working with thousands and thousands of people, and putting them on a mucus-free healing piece. It was raw mucusless healing with herbs, and it was transforming people, so but his thing he didn't start off trying to like have some angle, like, okay, I'm gonna make some money with this, like, okay, this is a fad right now, this is raw foods or this vegan thing, it wasn't about that. It was about that he had some information and experiences that he could share, and he started sharing it with people, and then there was a demand, and so he kept sharing it with people, and he had to deal with what he had to deal with in terms of the law and all that kind of stuff, So anyway, I've been going on and on. You got anything to add to this, Tony?
Oh man, not really, man. You broke it down. One thing, like I really appreciate what you've done to create this community and the work that you've had to put in. A lot of people aren't, there's a lot of people who like get into a diet, like a fruit diet or something for like a year, and they're up there trying to save the world and trying to do all this stuff, and it's like you really put in that longevity, which is lacking, you know what I mean? And I was actually messaging with somebody the other day and letting them know like how you created the Arid forum out of nothing, you know what I mean? And how you and how difficult it is to run a group. Like the person I was talking to runs the Emotional Detox forum on Facebook, and they were having like similar issues to stuff that I know that you've dealt with before, and some of those things I was just kind of telling them like how you deal with it, you know what I mean? And it's just interesting, because people think it's so easy to run a forum and stuff like that and to set up a community, but I mean, if you give this thing 2 seconds, people will be on there talking about urine therapy, probiotics, all this different
therapy.
Stuff. Yeah, and
trying to capsules.
Yeah, exactly, and trying to frame it in terms of the Mucusless diet or whatever the topic is. And so just to really avoid that and to create like a streamlined forum is very difficult, and I don't know if I could be where I am today if the Arid forum didn't exist, you know what I mean? And so I'm just appreciative of you taking that step. And so, and the other thing is somebody did comment and said like, look, I was brought into this thing by the forum being public. Like I came across it because your public discussions ended up in my timeline. So that's just one of many examples of people who have really, really like benefited from this thing being public. It is, it's uncomfortable sometimes, or it might limit certain kinds of sharing, but really, really, no. It's so important. So important.
And the other thing it was like, well, what is what is the group about? And for me, my focus tends to be more on the transition side of things. So I want to hear about people's transition methodology, like the kind of stuff that Tony talks about, where he's like, he's got this 3-day methodology, or he's, check out his YouTube channel and his videos for that, his 3-day methodology. Other people talk about, Doug was on there talking about getting all these worms were coming out and this mucoid plaque and that kind of stuff, and so that's all transition, detox, that kind of stuff. And there's other places where some people feel comfortable talking about the ailments and stuff, but it's not necessarily like that group was not built to be a place where you really where you're talking to get super deep into specific diseases, because we don't even want to talk like that. Like we don't even want to. It's like you can talk about your symptoms. Like, okay, well, what symptoms are associated with this disease they told you had? But we don't even go down that road outside of symptoms, because we can analyze symptoms and we can start talking about a transitional detox approach. But what I recommend to people that have those kind of issues is you probably really need to work with somebody. Like get you in the same way that you would go and spend $500 on doctor appointments and pills. Work with somebody that knows what they're doing. That has that experience that can guide you down down that path, and take advantage. I mean, definitely take advantage of everything that's available, all the videos, all that are free. You check out the Raw Figs, the Dr. Morris's videos, the forums, what other people talk about. You check all that out, but sometimes you need to talk to somebody and get another opinion. That's like, okay, I'm going through this, but so what do you think? And if the person is competent and they know what they're talking about and what they're doing, they might be able to give you something that you didn't think about. And I mean, I'm working with a someone that practiced the Mucusless diet back in the 80s and 90s for years. He's real experienced. He's been there. He knows what to do. Yet he's working with me to kind of keep him on track, and working with things and and doing stuff, and I can kind of give some insights and stuff like that. And so even people that have practiced the diet for long periods of time find benefit with getting a coach or something. And I talk oftentimes with me. I tend to reserve certain discussions for privacy, because to me it's not enough to have. Because here's the thing: you think that a Facebook group is private? It's not private. Facebook people have all the access in the world. They can shut you down when they
Right.
feel like it. And that's what happened to the Dr. Morris site. That's what I don't want to happen to my site. What happened to Dr. Morris, the fans of Dr. Morris site, where it got too big. And I know the administrators were working real hard, and I commend them for the work that they did do, but it got dangerous for them. And I didn't realize that the people that are running the group have certain amount of legal liability, in terms of if there's some bad information on there that somebody gave, and somebody tries to use it, then there's issues involved with that, so these things you gotta be kind of careful and rational. So that's why with me, I'm like, if you want to have some serious private discussions, then let's do it privately, but you can have a secret group on there. And it's still not private, because Facebook Big Brother is there, looking at your thing, and if you say something that really goes too much against the grain, you're not in a position of power. They can shut your thing down. YouTube can shut down your YouTube channel, which has happened multiple times with a lot of different people. So my thing is, you use these tools to the best of your ability, and with the resources that you have now, you use the tools, but you can't get too addicted to them, or you can't rely on them, and you can't think about them in a certain way, just in terms of, like the concept, the privacy concepts and that kind of stuff. Just because, I mean, even with me personally, even in a private group, there's certain things that I just wouldn't want to talk about. Like, I would want to talk individually with a Dr. Morris or or whoever, be like, okay, like, here's what I'm going through, boom, and then the forum is like that spot where you can kind of throw out those questions like, well, what do y'all think about this, or okay, I'm going through this, and and that kind of stuff. But so that's just my thoughts on it. Everybody, there's a lot of opinions, and I welcome all that. But I just wanted to give a little background and a little bit of, kind of where I'm coming from, with that perspective. Yeah, Matthew says for real, So yeah, and I appreciate everybody's, just everybody being on there, starting to have these serious discussions, about the Mucusless diet and all there. So all right, let's move on, and I'm gonna nip this one in the bud just real quick. I don't even want to talk about this too long, but there is a question on the forum: do coffee enemas cause mucus? Not that I do them. I'm just curious. Not saying I'm not saying names right now, but here's the thing: I don't propagate coffee enemas. I know that I think, popularized by the Gershon therapy approach to dealing with, cancers and things like that, and it was more of a liver elimination to kind of try to it would basically create this stimulation that would cause this like squeezing process that would cause like the stones to come out, the little stones and stuff. But from our perspective, as Brother Harris calls it, bean soup is what he calls coffee. It's anything that is that addictive, because just drinking coffee is already addictive, and it's addictive based on the caffeine, based on that, look, because that's a whole other animal that we'll have to talk about sometimes, is the coffee. I didn't realize how bad the coffee addiction was in this country, because it wasn't an issue I had to deal with. But then when I started working with people, and even my friends practicing Mucusless Diet, they're talking about like, man, I can't, I'm trying, but I can't go without my coffee. And I mean, you want to talk about the first 2 days of fasting being rough. Like, be a coffee addict, and then try to get off, then do your first 2 days of a fast with no coffee. Woo, crash and burn. So my thing is, I don't promote it. I don't like talking about it. I know there's some people that have that mistakenly put like a lemon enema in the same category as like a coffee enema, in terms of just trying to, like, just saying all enemas are bad, and that's a fallacy. I would say that's a terrible misstep to compare a lemon juice enema to a coffee enema, because it's not even in the same realm, and they're not even for the same purpose, because the coffee enema really isn't. It's not about, like, I guess supposed to have like there's a laxative effect maybe, but it's not astringent. It's not trying to get into the lining of your mucous membrane and intestines, and really start breaking down and neutralizing the mucus and stuff. It's stimulant. So the word people like to use is innervation, and so that's just my thing on that. When you talk about these therapies, Eric talks about it. Camouflage fast. Almost all of these therapies that have purported to cure some disease, or people have said that it helped them overcome an ailment, it's hard to find it. It's real hard to find one that's not based in some way, some kind of level of fasting, and getting off and away from pus and mucus forming foods. So they might have these other little sort of quirks to them, where it's like, well, this one is this over here is this is the alkaline water people, and then this is the coffee enema people, and this is the rebounding people, and you have people that deal with these quirks and then sort of say that that's what did it. But the one thing that all of these different therapies and all of these different things that people use to heal themselves of chronic illness, the one thing they all have in common is some level of fasting, some level of food restriction, and the ones that work better than the others are the ones where they're getting away from mucus and pus-forming foods. And so my thing is, you cut it to the quick and deal with the Mucusless Diet Healing System, and kind of check that out. But so that's my thing. I don't know. You have anything to say on the coffee enema thing?
Oh man, I don't.
I've
never done them. I won't do them. And if you ask me about them, I'll say don't do them.
Yeah. So that's what it is. So do they cause mucus? Well, they cause innervation. I mean, they don't. When we talk, they're gonna cause a response. But that's not how I define a mucus-forming item. Because some people, that's what they think of, is like, if they eat something, then mucus comes out in their mouth, then they're going to think that that's mucus-forming. That's not how it works. That you might be eating a piece of fruit that's astringent, but with coffee, it's not necessarily. It's liquid. It's not going to degrade into slime unless you got like that thick espresso kind of thing going on where you got the bean grit, yeah, coffee grit and that kind of stuff. If that gets sitting in there, you know, maybe, but it's just an irritant, you know, and it's a stimulant, and it's gonna you know, it's gonna cause you crash and burn, you know, adrenal weakness. People like to talk about that. You know, it's all involved, and so that's my thing with that. Okay, so let me see. We got a couple more to deal with here. Is this the last? Is this the last one? Okay, so I got one more here, and then I'll take a couple of the questions that have been out there on the internet that people have been posting up. So let me see here. So this one is okay. So this is about what this gentleman's calling fructose intolerance, and then every once in a while I get folks that's like that. They'll say, well, you know, I love to do the system, but I have, you know, I have all kinds of issues when I eat fruit. So what I say to that is, first of all, what I would do would be separate yourself from whatever disease word that is used. You know, I'm not giving medical advice. You know, I'm giving you know, friendship, the advice of a friend, of a caring friend. You know, like the advice is that you know, you are not these words that they tell you are. You know, you're not the disease. Though those words might allow you to identify a group of symptoms, and perhaps the glands, it can lead you to the glands and the organs that are not functioning properly and that are weak, that have maybe been burned by acids and the acidosis internally. Can show you where you have local constipation internally, but the process of healing that is going to be similar across the board. You know, you can have minutia in terms of, you know, certain plants or certain herbs might help something in this direction or that direction, but at the end of the day, we're talking fasting, we're talking fruit, we're talking transition. You know, we're talking mucus-free meals, and that's where we're at. So in terms of that, we can get kind of deeper in, and normally with those kind of folks, like I'm most comfortable working with them, you know, on, you know, at least for a month or so, you know, in terms of like a coaching situation where I can really like, okay, let me transition, let me show you what things that you can use to transition. It might not be apparent from just reading the book, but there is a way that you can transition and start to heal the glands that are responsible for preventing you from really being able to metabolize the sugar properly. You know, and so so just off rip, and I won't go too much into it because again, I'd rather work one-on-one with people. But just in terms of an overall rule of thumb, that's where you get into your green drinks at first. You know, you start juicing greens. You know, eating the vegetable meals and the salads. You know, and Eric will talk about that where we would look at that kind of situation is your system is so toxic that you can't eat fruit without having all kinds of, you know, just stuff happen to you and symptoms that you feel. So instead of you know, again, that's where we're going to be a little different, where we're not going to use these diseases as a bondage. You know, we're saying, well, like this is about filthiness, and we all have to, you know, look in the mirror and be like, okay, well, I'm filthy, you know, I'm sick and toxic. What can I do? So if you're that toxic, where fruit is giving you trouble, then you have to start with the vegetables. You start with the green drinks. You start with the salads. You get into your enemas, and you get into, you know, if you want. Don't do anything I'd say if you don't want to do it. You know, I'm just my recommendation. But you get into these things, and then you can start to be okay. there are options. That's where Eric talks about the stewed or baked fruit, which is going to be less aggressive. And a lot of folks that have those kind of issues, they can tolerate, a baked banana or a baked apple, or lightly cooked apple or something like that. That eliminates it still eliminates well. It's still mucus free, but you've changed the chemistry just enough to where it's not going to be as aggressive on you. And a lot of people can deal with that. Go for your sub-acid fruits, your watermelon, the so-called, low glycemic and all that, like a lot of that terminology, but, that kind of stuff where you can find, you might not be able to go eat, like, the banana might not be ready for that, but you can deal with some watermelon, which is so the watermelon that you find around here these days are so depleted and free of the sugar that should be there. But you find there's always a way, but sometimes you got to work through these things and work yourself. The deeper levels, you're going to be you got the herb levels and you got that kind of stuff and the fasting and things, but so there's ways to deal with that, and there's people that have done it, that are going down this route. So so that's my answer for that. And I'll say just you got to get your endocrine system together, the electrical system, so that the fruit really does what it's supposed to do, and it can be done. It definitely can be done.
Yeah, man. You in that situation, that'd be a good situation to actually work with somebody one-on-one and try to seek that help and that guidance, and take, just like Spira could give somebody, do some step-by-step things with somebody's guidance, and you'll get over that hump pretty quickly and be right on course.
Yeah. Okay, so before I will take a couple more questions. I might not get to everybody's question because I kind of got a lot, but what I'm going to do is, I'm getting better about just collecting the questions as I get them, and in the next time we do one of these, I will, I will address more questions. And so, this is going to try this out because it seems like a lot of people seem to kind of like this format, and just the vibration of a live broadcast. It kind of gives it's just there's a vibe to it and stuff, and so
like the radio.
Yeah, and we had talked, and I talked with Brother Air about that anyway, and that's something that we're gonna have be on the lookout for a Brother Air session coming up. He's getting ready to, he's been fasting for 3 months, so he's ready to talk to the world. He's got some deep things to say. He does that, he'll get into something heavy and really be in this meditative states and kind of get inspired to say some new ways to see just his wisdom and stuff. Just have a whole new line of wisdom for folks just to chew on for a minute. And so the one thing that I wanted to talk about is so this is basically an offer. I'm gonna give you a little sale offer for the folks that's watching right now, or the folks that I guess watch the replay within the next day. I'm offering I'm gonna share this my screen here. Actually, let's do it like this. Hold on a second. I'll just do that. Okay, it's gonna look funny for a second. Okay, so you're seeing my screen here. So basically, I'm giving you guys a coupon code. So this is going to be 50% off all my consultation services. So the coupon code is live video, because we're doing a live broadcast. So live video. I should have a link here for you so that you know where to go. I should have put I'm gonna put that up here in a second. But if you go to mucusfreelife.com, you can see where it says like the consultation services, fact, let me open that up. So basically, it's 50% off the already. There's already sales on some of the ones, but I basically have monthly service. So that's like a set of 4 either phone or Skype consultations and email support. Then I have a bi-weekly package where every other week we have a session, and then throughout that process you can email questions and we can talk. And then I have like the one-time power, what I call the power session. And let me show you where we're at here. Just go back to this. So and this is something that I'm gonna I've been having really good clients recently, and my thing is the reason I'm doing this is because I have a couple slots open for this next week. So I'm like, let me I'll offer this thing here. The Mucus-free-life.com Mucusless coaching is where I have my what they call landing page. It's got some testimonials, and which it looks like I need to update this page, but that kind of stuff. But here's the package. So we got the one-time power session, normally $95, bi-weekly supports normally $171, and the monthly support $228. Now these are already totally, I mean, you can't, in most cases, you're not going to find cheaper prices for any kind of naturopath or practitioner, or definitely can't see a doctor for this kind of like try to see every week you go and have a consultation with a medical doctor and try to have it be under 228. But if you do this within the next day, and it may say you've been wanting to talk to me one-on-one, or you got something you think I could help you with, because my forte is I am good at I collect a little bit of information about just your background, your eating habits, all that kind of stuff, and there's always an answer. There's always a transitional answer in terms of a better option, something that you can eat or that you can do that will help you get to the next stage, the next level. And there's not a lot of people that will allow you to be as incremental as I will take you on. Because a lot of people don't know anything about the cooked fruit levels, and they don't deal with that level. When your digestion is messed up, they don't know about the dried fruit followed by the juicy fruit levels. They might deal with the herbs, but I know about the herbs, and we can talk about that, but I also know about everything that's in that Mucusless Diet book, and those methods work. And the herbs are in the Mucusless Diet book, talking about the herbal formulas and the stomach and bowel formula that Eric put there. Now in terms of herbs, I tend to deal with the Dr. Morris stuff, because I've studied his methods thoroughly, because they were the most. His methods are the closest to Arnold Ehret's. It's a 21st century methodology and we're talking about the really deep illnesses, the kind of people that Ehret had worked with. People that were on their deathbeds, chronic illnesses. They came to Ehret Sanitarium, and he would deal with them, and that's what Dr. Morris did. So so I'm trying to. So I have that, but I also have the transitional methodology and all that. So, so enough about me. But but I'm it's something that I enjoy doing, and I love seeing that my advice really helps people, and it does feel like a calling. And it's not something that I really take credit for, because it's like there's something that can channel through me, when I'm talking to people, or when somebody asks me a question, or they have an issue, and it's like, I have a rational response, and I don't pretend to know things that I don't know. So if I don't know something, then I'll be, oh, okay, I ain't really looked into that yet, so let me check some people out, because if I don't know, I know people that will have the best answer possible for whatever the question is, so So that's that piece. So anyway, if you watch this again within the next day, this is only going to be like this for a couple days, but you would go here and you pick whichever one, add it to the cart, and when you go to checkout, you put in it says have a coupon up here. You put the coupon code in, and you just type it in, live video. Might as well do it. And then when you apply the coupon, it should apply it down there. And if it doesn't, then let me know if there's some kind of, it's already applied, if there's some kind of issue. So that is your today's thing, because I want to give something back to folks that are really really supporting what we're doing, and those that really check the videos out, and I'm so happy that there's a lot of you guys that really do, that you watch all of these videos and you appreciate this content, and I appreciate you, I really do, I appreciate you guys, because it's been a lonely road for a long time, and now it's nice to have friends that I can interact with and talk to, and that are as passionate about this path as I am. So, so I appreciate that. So, with that said, let me check out a couple of these other questions. Okay, there's a question here. Okay, there's this one question, there's several different people that have brought this up. I think I'm gonna table this because we could talk an hour or two about this one topic. So we're gonna make a special video on the topic, but it's about masturbation and that kind of thing. I think there's several different people. I mean, I could start talking about it now, but I think it might be better to kind of get into that. Yeah, I don't know, unless Tony wants to get into it now. Are you in the mood?
I mean, we could really, but I mean,
just to touch on. I don't know. Maybe I'll give you okay. What we'll do? I'll give an abbreviated version, or I'll try, because I say every time I say that, and I'm talking for an hour about a subject. But what I'm gonna do is give you basically basically the Mucusless Diet answer. So when you look in Mucusless Diet, in that section where Eric's talking about sex and he's talking about children, there's some controversial philosophical things that he's discussing. And like I always say, you don't have to believe everything that Eric says to practice a Mucusless Diet. Because Eric has on one hand, he has methodologies of transition, fasting, and guidelines of what to do if you want to practice a Mucusless Diet, if you want to go down this path. But on the other hand, there's other sections, or there's other things that are purely, like theoretical, or even more so philosophical. And so with the philosophical discussions, you want to be able to approach them philosophically, with a little bit of intellect, with a little bit of like, let's deal with ideas. Let's not be so emotional or sort of coming from some kind of dogmatic standpoint. Let's be open and deal with these ideas. Not a lot of people can do that. Philosophical dialogic analysis and discussion is an art form. And it's an art form that I notice a lot of people aren't really checking out. A lot of people haven't been given those skills to have those kind of dialogues, because you have to have a dialogue, by definition, you have to be willing to be changed by the discussion. So it's not a dialogue. If you have a position and an opinion, and you're not open to to have that opinion be challenged and then ultimately changed, then you're not having a dialogue. You know, you're talking and you're talking at somebody, and that person is talking back at you, and it's not a fruitful discussion. It's not a dialogue. In order to have a dialogue, you have to be open to say, okay, let me examine these ideas. So let's you examine the idea of is it possible if you the cleaner you get to a point where you can overcome an addiction to, if you want to frame it as an addiction. A lot of people within Mucusless Diet community probably would, to masturbation. Can you what does that mean? So what Eric was basically saying was, the cleaner you get and the further away you get from mucus-free or mucus eating, is the more control you're going to have. It's not that, and what some people have tried to purport is that, well, the reason that you can be celibate for long periods of time or that kind of thing is because you have a low libido or something. And that is 100% wrong. I will tell that person, you're wrong with that piece, because that's not how this works. What happens is you develop a control where if you want to do something, you can do what you want to do. You know, if you want to go and do this, or you want to go be with folks in the opposite sex or whatever and do your thing, you can do your thing.
Basically, you can get an erection if you want. It's not like you can't.
Yeah. I mean, you can, like, okay. So now we done opened it up now. So now it's gonna get all deep, personal things, But what I would say is, you know. You know how all one of the first things that was ever on the internet was they would you would be online, and then all of a sudden you get these pop-ups talking about natural male enhancement, grow 5 inches and all this stuff will pop up. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying the Mucusless Diet Healing System is if there's something to be enhanced, it can and will enhance it. But at the same time, you get the control. This thing is about control. I mean, that's really what all that comes down to is. And Brother Air said this. We're in it now, so let's go. Brother Air told me one time, and this was philosophically speaking, it's very interesting, because he was basically saying, when you orgasm, you at that moment in time, you have lost control, because it doesn't matter who would walk in that door, your orgasm ain't gonna stop. Your motion might shift, like your mother, your father walks in, or your grandmother or something. They might walk in.
Right.
But
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, but you for that 10 seconds. You don't have control. You can't just stop it. You can't just stop your climax. Once it's initiated, you can't stop it. You've relinquished your position of control, as a human being. You've let that go. Now, in terms of the nature part, nature versus nurture, if you want to deal with the nature part, it makes sense that the filthier you are, the more you're gonna feel like you want to have sex, because you want to, you want to reproduce. You want to, you want to spread your, if you're male, you spread your seed. Female, you want to have a child. And those urges are, and with us, as Eric said, there's nobody living today that's the product of true love vibrations. What he means by that is there's nobody that really has, has been conceived with clean bodies. With people that have been, fruitarians for 40 or 50 years. I mean, that's the level I'm talking about, and I'm talking about mucusless fruitarian. So we put the bar high when we start talking about this stuff. I'm talking about people that can do a 6-month water fast or 2 years fruit juice fast. So that's the bar. So after having been doing these things for 50, 60 years, then the cynics will say, well, there's nobody that's done nothing like that. Well, I mean, we're working toward that. We can look at guys like Brother Aaron. There's other people that have done things that if they keep going down the path they're on, then that will be the reality. But you first have to have that vision, and then you have to have the system that can make the vision a reality. That's what hasn't happened. That's what there hasn't been there enough of before, where there might be people with the vision, but they didn't have the system part together. Or some people might have some systematic understanding, but really not have the vision to see that far. Because if you can see that far, and at the same time have the understanding and the maturity to see that you're gonna have that it's not gonna happen overnight, that level of humanity that you envision, that you would like to be a part of, isn't going to happen in a couple years trying to eat nothing but fruit. That's not how this thing works. We got some serious transformation that we have to deal with. And
yeah, definitely.
So so that kind of thing. So the thing with that is, on one hand, rumor had it that Eric liked the females. Eric was, but he would so it's one thing where, and this is what a lot of guys do anyway, is they'll have the elevated thoughts, but then they don't necessarily live like that. Now we don't know, because I'm not saying I don't know Eric. There's a lot of limited information, but it doesn't matter, because you're talking about philosophy. So we're working with ideas, and we're working, and then we're looking at how do those ideas affect the way we live? How do those ideas affect our well-being? Our spiritual understanding. What are our goals? Brother Air was celibate for 10 years. I was celibate for 10 years. Brother Air was celibate for 10 years, and then found a wife and had a child and raised that child on the Mucusless diet. That was his vision. And the Mucusless diet, and that's coming from a period where he was a what they call a ladies' man, where he was, he did not have any problems in that area of life. And so that was a choice that he made, that was like on this path. And it wasn't that, and Eric didn't say to do that. Eric doesn't say, just don't have sex, don't do this. He's saying, like, have control. I mean, that's what I get from it. When he's talking about, that masturbation is unnatural, and that, or he doesn't even say that. He just basically says, you don't have to do it the cleaner you get. On a mucusless diet, the propensity to want to do that isn't necessarily as strong as it would be. So the way that I look at that is, it's not that there's an action that is inherently evil, like people will want to do from a religious type of, with certain religious viewpoints, like this is a sinful or is evil or something like that. It's like, no, it's not about that. It's about control. And as a human being, as an elevated, higher level human being, it's about control. How much control do you have? Can you control what you put into your mouth? Can you control your actions and what you do? A lot of the people that we're dealing with, you turn on the news, those people are out of control. They have no control. They've relinquished their control by what they chose to eat and how they've chosen to live. There's certain fates and karma that have been put in place that they would have to go through quite a bit of transformation to turn a lot of that kind of thing around. And some of them do. But again, it's about information and opportunity. When the two things come together, then you can have some serious transformation, among people. And
yeah, exactly.
So that's that's my piece. I know I know Tony's got some perspectives on this.
Yeah, man. I got, it's something that I think about. One thing is that like in the study of animals, or what's natural, like natural life, um, animals really only start ejaculating in domesticated situations, like um, like you have the animal, like the primate called a bonobo, which some people say is closer to a human being, and they're very like sex oriented, um, and they use sex as kind of like just a social aspect of like greeting almost, um, and then you have in the same line of primates and whatnot, you have um, like gorillas or chimpanzees or something that they all have different degrees of like how they express their sexuality, but none of them really ejaculate like that. Um, Pretty much in the animal world, species only ejaculate for reproduction, and sex itself outside of reproduction usually doesn't involve ejaculation. And there's been studies that have shown that when animals are domesticated, they start masturbating a lot more, and at the really extreme end, they'll start ejaculating. But even now, when like primates and stuff are confined and domesticated, they might masturbate, but they very rarely ejaculate. Um, so that's one piece, and so what we're looking at is that same conditioning dynamic that we talked about in terms of like late night overeating. You have a conditioning process where um, certain natural fulfillments are blocked. And so what do you do instead? You eat mucus, you eat pus, you masturbate, you ejaculate, you waste time, you lose control, you fantasize, and all of that. Like, I'm not demonizing it, just like you said. I completely disagree with the idea of sin and all that in that context. But what we're looking at is, what is the missing picture? Like, if you take out overeating, if you take out mucus foods, if you take out like masturbation for the purpose of like individual stimulation, um, like the question is like, what part of human life are we missing? Like, what kind of deep meditation, what kind of song and dance and high level music and artistic expression and true love vibrations? Like, a lot of people outside of the mucusless diet, man, they don't even conceive of this other 99% of human life that is outside of the realms of like eating for pleasure and all that stuff, just like having sex for individual pleasure, reproducing just because you want to reproduce, um, no vision, no higher level true civilization. Um, so masturbation pretty much falls under the category of like, I'm bored, I want some pleasure. Um, and then you have studies and such that frame that as being okay. Like I said, I'm not demonizing it, but you have studies and whatnot that say, like, oh, a person who smokes a joint every once in a while is a little bit more happier than somebody who doesn't. Or you have studies where it's like, these different kind of things, like, oh, somebody who has sex twice a week is this different than somebody who doesn't. Um, Now, on the flip side of things, Eric had a different view because he also talked about like not withholding the sperm out of the idea that you're developing this higher level, um, like you're feeding the brain, and that's one of his theories, and there's some interesting aspects to that because, like, generally across the lines of the yoga philosophy, withholding ejaculation produces stronger willpower. And as you get deeper into that, it's like it nourishes the nervous system and such like that. But what I found, and that's true, you know, but what I found is that just like what you were saying is this control, this aspect of self-control, not that egoistic control that people are afraid of, you know, like, oh, you're into the mucusless diet, you're controlling and you're like trying to control everything. Like really what we're talking about is this development of willpower so that you can say like, yeah, I used to love pizza. Like pizza used to be like an ejaculation. Like I wanted it. You know what I mean? And then on the other side, it's like fresh pineapple. Like it looks good, it tastes good, it feels good, it's healthy for you. You know all around that you love the pineapple. But the ejaculation, the addiction, the stimulation is with this pizza. And have you developed the willpower to say, yeah, I used to be addicted to the pizza, but I'm going to choose the pineapple. That's the difference of willpower that we're talking about in terms of like the more you clean yourself up, the more you can make that choice. Like, okay, I'm not going to spend a half hour masturbating and ejaculating. I'm going to spend a half hour studying the mucusless diet. I'm going to spend a half hour having
making
a real love, making music, or having a real
writing
love
poetry.
Yeah, writing poetry, or just having a love vibration with a loved one. And that's a big piece that's missing, man. It's like just because you're not dealing with that stimulated ejaculation and whatnot, like people have missed that whole level of human relation that is outside the context of like, let's go to the restaurant together, let's do this and that. It's like, no, what happened to like truly having a male-female relationship based on like evolving self-evolution, like higher states of conversation and you know, music together and whatnot, all those positive things. That's not just sex. That's not just like the development of further fetish. You know what I mean? Like, okay, we used to do this type of sex. Let's see how kinky we can get. You know what I mean? That's how a lot of relationships, at least in the immature level, go. It's like, let's see how like we can develop our fetishes to keep getting the same level of stimulation. And that is the definition of addiction. You know what I mean? Like you're unfulfilled by this level. How much more can you pursue the stimulation to get the same level of happiness? And that's a waste of time. Like that's the human relationships that we have. You know, like we used to let's say with your friends, you used to smoke like a blunt on Saturdays and go to the club. Now it's like, can we go to the club 3 times a week to get that same level of stimulation? You know, so this is the dynamic that we're talking about with the masturbation. And from my experience, my personal experience is that when I don't ejaculate, like it's not that I'm feeding my brain. It's more so that I'm just it's more like the ejaculation itself fries the nervous system temporarily, and because it's like you took a little bit of crack, you did a little addiction, and taking your addiction does not correlate at the same time to have a higher state of consciousness. So you temporarily like fried your system, but it's not like, oh, I didn't ejaculate for this long and so I'm so special. You know, it's just like the release itself has a certain effect on the physiology.
Yeah,
and that's
well,
why
it's like the electricity, you know, what Brother Air said, that
Exactly.
you know, like that release is powerful enough to, you know, electrically speaking, to run the electricity of a small city, you know, just for a period of time, you know. So,
but that's your vitality, like already. It's not that you know, it's not this competition to see how long you can go without releasing, and therefore you're like feeding your brain. Like that's, I believe, almost what Eric was talking about when he was
I
saying
don't
like,
know which part are you talking about, because I'm not sure that
because
interpretation.
we had talked about that before, because he said
I don't think he
he
said that.
he said he mentioned like withholding the germ to feed the brain, and we had talked about that before, and you were talking about like, I believe you were telling me like the germ, like the sperm can be called a germ, and that's what he was talking about. It's like he didn't agree with the idea of like withholding the germ to feed the brain.
Oh, right, yeah, right. Yeah, like he
That's what I'm
didn't
referring
agree with
to.
it. Yeah.
And I think that he was critiquing the Europeans that he knew who were into the yoga philosophy, who were like trying to be celibate, and like they were probably like, oh, you know, I'm feeding the brain. And he was saying like he wasn't really bashing that. He was just saying like, look, the diet is the way to go. It's not just like I'm eating rice and beans and stuff like that, but I'm meditating and I'm celibate, so I'm spiritual. He was saying like, no, spirituality and higher states of consciousness don't just
Well,
come
here, let
from
me
like
let me read.
celibacy.
Let me read. You know, this
Yeah.
talking about Eric. Let's read Eric. You know, masturbation. This is from an annotated Mucusless Diet Healing System here, and this is in this lesson on sex, which is 23, and they talk about gonorrhea, natural control of sex, sex psychology. This is under natural control of sex. But what we were talking about, that saying, keeping the germ, an idea of modern experts will nourish a person's brain, high protein substance, is absurd. Love is the greatest power, and it is, if natural, the invisible food from the infinite, for soul and body. And
Exactly.
you know, and so above that it says masturbation, night emissions, prostitution, etc., are all eliminated from the sex life of anyone living on a mucusless diet after their body has become clean and powerful. So that's basically what what we've been saying. You know, so again,
Right.
it's
Exactly.
like, because I don't want, because you know, Tony was kind of intense a little bit. We don't want to, like, you know, we don't want to, you know, because this ain't about the way this type of conversation comes off. You know, so we have to be real about the way it comes off, is then people say, you know, feel like if they're doing that kind of thing, or you know, you're dealing with their addiction, you know, or addictions, or even framing it like that people will get defensive, you know. And we don't say nothing that we don't have, you know what I mean? We never say like, well, I'm the first person to say I'm no longer a pus addict, but I'm a mucus addict. You know, and so
Yeah,
that's like,
exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
that has to be clear, because people don't understand that, because they're used to hearing people talk from some kind of high horse, and that's just not us. Like,
Exactly. No, no, no.
we speak
Exactly.
from a position of wanting to transform ourselves to higher levels. Period. You know, and
Exactly.
that's it, and we're saying we're not there yet, and we
Exactly.
don't know anybody that's there yet. Because, you know, the people that we know that's on the highest levels, they're not there yet. You know, some of them think they are. You know, some people, but those people tend to not, actually be on lower levels. Because as soon as you think you're there, you lost the whole piece. You know, you lost the game, you lost the ship, because it ain't about that. You know, as soon as you think you've made it, you lost. You know, you become lost, because this thing
Exactly. Right.
is a whole different piece. And so this is about elevation on all different levels, you know. And so it's all transition. It's still
Right.
within this
Exactly. You
context.
know, exactly.
Same principle of transition art can be applied, you know.
Exactly, man. And that, you know, I had like a few more things to say about that, like leading into the transition paradigm. Um, but I just want to be really honest. Um, the key point about what Eric said there is love vibration. And that's what I want to emphasize is my experience with masturbation and ejaculation, but more so masturbation, like not even so much the ejaculation piece. what it is for me is the minute you turn a woman's body into your object for sexual pleasure, you have negated the love vibration that could be there. And that's the piece that I think everybody, especially the women and such, can vibe with, is we are living in a time of patriarchy. And there's some theories that, like, before that there was matriarchal rule that had the same connotation, where men were used as sexual objects for reproduction and for women's pleasure. And then now we're in a time where it's like women have been used for men's pleasure, and just like, well, just give me some kids and just feed the kids and run the household. You know what I mean? And so in my own experience, like, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to really develop an appreciation for a woman based on, like, true equality. Like, I don't want to be seen, I don't want somebody just thinking about me sexually. Personally, I don't get, like, I've been in past relationships that were, like, sexualized, and it was all about, like, that type of thing, and they didn't really care about my higher philosophies or my spiritual pursuits, or like the mucusless diet, you know what I mean? And it's like, so it's like, sex is great if it falls under the category of love vibration. But when it falls under the category of, like, you're the sexual object that I'm fantasizing about so I can get my release, that is like the woman becomes the pizza, the woman becomes the pus and the mucus. And so that's my piece about masturbation. I don't personally vibe with, like, people who, like, ejaculate or have a night emission, and they feel so bad, like, oh shoot, like, I just did this, and, like, oh, it sucks, you know what I mean? Like, I don't necessarily vibe with that. For me, it's more of a pursuit of, like, it's not about, like, if you ejaculate or masturbate, it's about the context of your sexuality. And is it evolving? And so my last point on that is that there has to be a transition, because you're not just going to go cold turkey and become a whole new person. Your sexuality, your everything, it's been brought up, especially like you're coming from the African American perspective or whatever. Like, a lot of it comes from, like, rape and slavery and imposed sexual paradigms. Like, you know, I don't know how deep we can get and stuff, but what I'm saying is like, sex today has gone from, like, reproduction is beautiful to, like, let's take birth control pills, let's do everything we can to not reproduce, but let's focus on oral sex, anal sex, all this different stuff. Like, if you listen to, like, Nicki Minaj or, like, some stuff on popular culture, almost none of it is about, like, true sex. Almost all of it is about fetish. And that's what I'm saying, is this is about individual, like, pleasure pursuit for stimulation. And so I know I grew up in that paradigm. Like, I have some lyrics that I remember.
Now we're gonna have to, you know, there's a gender gap here. We're not representing, and we don't have females here to chime in on this. So there's only so far we can really even take the discussion, because you know, as you say that, I'm thinking, well, you know, I know very little about, like, you know, romance novels and erotica, and there's a whole level of things that folks of that you know, I'm sure people of all genders and orientations get into some of that stuff, but they tend to be frequented by you know, folks of the female persuasion. So I don't, you know, so there's all, like I said here, but in terms of the only underlying consistent piece that we can really deal with is stimulation and control.
Exactly, man.
And so you either want control. That's what we're talking about. Physiological liberation is the ultimate control over all, you know, over your entire self in the way that you
so you can pursue something that's more loving and higher.
Well, and not,
Taste.
but at a certain level, not even that, because you are that. Like when you're clean,
Yeah, true.
you're not pursuing anything anymore. Now you are the love. Like because it's you already are the love, but it's obstructed. And so this path
True.
is about
True.
unobstructing. So you unobstruct the pathways.
True.
You
True.
unobstruct. You unobstruct on all levels. You're releasing the that which is not necessary. So it becomes so now you're not wasting any energy. You're not wasting any time. You're not doing things based on a stimulant level. You're doing things based on a what you're talking about, the love vibrations. You are that. You step
Exactly.
into that reality, and it's not just a mental thing, because people want to do that all the time, where they're like, well,
Exactly.
I am love, and I love is, and then they're like,
Right.
they go eat the burger, and they eating whatever, and and I'm just saying, let's come down again, back to the philosophy discussion. There's a way to use that productively, and then there's a way that where it's just like a self brainwash kind of hypnosis thing of trying to make yourself feel good for the wrong reasons. And that I
Right.
find that's gonna inhibit your ability to evolve and get better, because at a certain point you're gonna think you're already there, or you're gonna think you're close, and you got to be humble to practice this path and this diet. This isn't about like I'm great, I'm better than I'm so evolved, I'm so elevated. Like as soon as you think like that, your thing is over. I mean, it's like that you're done. Because
Right.
karma is at work, and I'm telling you, and Dr. Morris has told you, and Brother Air has told you that as soon as your attitude gets like that, boom, here comes diet. Here comes physiology. Here comes your weaknesses.
Exactly.
Here comes all this. I'm never gonna do that. Boom, here you go.
Yeah. Right.
Mother Nature will body slam you to the ground,
Oh
kick
yeah,
you in the
man.
face, and be like, "I told you to get in line."
Right.
You think you think that you are whatever,
Perfect. Or
and this thing
potentially
is
perfect and all this. It's
this
like
yeah,
just
I mean, this thing is about you actually learning to let go for real. Like
yeah,
now you're
exactly.
letting go and really allowing the universe to do whatever it's supposed to do, and that's how you get in line with Mother Nature. And any kind of resistance to that is resisting uh, the inevitable. And that's where my thing with the diet comes in, because then people are kind of like, well, it's not really for me, and I'm just like, well, I mean, it's not for you right now, because you ain't ready, you haven't had enough of the roller coaster. They say the circle of life and death, and the pain and the suffering and the sickness and disease, and you haven't
Yep.
had enough of that. So I will be here waiting for when you get tired of that. When you get tired of that roller coaster, I'll be here. And so I don't have with people, I have no vested interest in, where some people get, and that's there was actually, maybe I can field another question that I saw on there, where somebody asked, how do you get people into the mucusless diet? How can you try to try to get folks into this lifestyle? And let me actually read the actual.
Yeah, I was just thinking like you don't necessarily show them this stuff. You know what I mean?
Like this video. Yeah, this would not be the video to show them. That's why we have videos of puppets talking about mucusless diet. Now we have children's books that have like mucus characters and mucus destroyer, and stuff. So, so
Yeah, and my ideas, man, like the stuff that I was saying, I'm not even trying to say it represents the mucusless diet only. It's just more about like some personal experiences and pursuit and interests and thoughts, you know.
Right, right.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So it was, yeah. So how do you inspire people to get on the mucusless train? And yeah, thanks for that question, there, Brittany. And so the mucusless train. I mean, it's basically what I've tried to do is, I've studied a lot of just sort of observed social science and how people interact and things. And we kind of even talked about it earlier when we were talking about the forum, but there's power in seeing a group of people that are talking about the diet, that all are doing it. And so that's why periodically I try to have the meetups, because if you have like a group of 5, 6, 7 people that are all practicing the diet, and it's public where other people can see the conversations, it's kind of like, wow, there's people that are doing this, and there's diverse people, there's women, there's people of all ages, and so that sends a message to people like this is more than just some fad thing. This is a real thing with real people. It doesn't, because people like that sheep mentality. People like a group of people, and so up to now, the people that have tended to get into the diet were going to be the leaders or the loners or the people that sort of could see and weren't afraid to step away from the crowd. And it's still like that because it's so far away from a mainstream thing. But the vegan thing is starting to get more mainstream, so talking plant-based isn't looked at as crazy anymore, and the raw pieces has these little mainstream pieces, but that's still a smaller, much smaller category than the whole vegan movement thing. So so my thing with that is you have to live it. I mean, you have to do it, and then when you talk with people, you can't be wanting to push it on them, but the thing is, it's naturally going to come into any conversation that you have, because food always comes into the conversation at some point, especially if you're talking business or something serious or whatever. The way that they release attention is to talk about, okay, we're going to go eat now. We're going to take our break, and we're going to go to lunch, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And so diet always comes up. So even if you don't have to be the one to start the conversation, because if somebody sees you sitting there eating an apple, or I used to walk around with bags of spinach and things, and people look at me like, what are you doing? And I'm looking at them like, I don't know, you got a bag of a bunch of little fake potato-y things, and this is just spinach here. Why is my bag of stuff I'm eating weird and yours is normal? So I mean, so just you being you. If you're practicing this thing, then you walk with the power of the mucusless diet. I mean, you enter the world with this, and people can feel that you're different. I mean, they can feel it when you walk in a room, just like, what, at least that's what happens to me. Because people are like I don't know what that dude's into, but it's something else. It's something else going on here.
Right.
And people can feel that and sense that, and then that makes people want to know. And so whether you feel like talking about it or not, people are going to ask you, be like, so what you into? What you doing? You got something else about you going on, and that little bit of kind of mystery, that people like that, for a minute. And so I've sort of honed my ability to talk about the diet over years, because that was something I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to talk to anybody off the street. I can walk up to anybody on the street, and I can do a pretty good job of selling them on the diet. But it took me years to be able to do that, and I'm already a decent salesperson. It was some experience years and years ago, but way before I got into the diet. When I was in Boy Scouts, if I wanted to go on the summer camp trips, I used to have to go door to door and sell mulch. And we actually sold citrus fruit in the wintertime, but I used to go door to door selling mulch to people. So so I kind of developed that whole vibe. But but it's just a way of kind of, well, that's you don't necessarily have to develop that, but I mean, you want to be able to talk about things in a way that normalizes it. So I will sometimes, like, I'll use words like plant-based because I like to get away from dogmatic terms or things, you know. So I might use the word vegan, but I will use the word plant-based more because then that doesn't put me in a pinhole as much. So I'll be like, well, you know, there's, you know, plant, and then when I talk about it, I'll just say like it's the most normal thing in the world, you know, and where I'll be talking about, oh well, you know, it's, you know, plant-based healing, and then if I'm talking to like some like butch guys and I start bringing up like, well, you know, Mike Tyson, he turned and he's on a plant-based diet now, right? You know that the big guy that you guys respect, you know, or if I'm talking to somebody that's into politics, you know, then I start talking about, well, you know, Bill Clinton, he's, you know, he lost all that weight after he had all those heart attacks. He got into a plant-based diet or vegan diet, you know, and then Ronald Reagan's daughter, when she was in an interview and she was asked her opinion on health, she said, "I got two words for you, Arnold Ehret." You know, so I mean, so and then people, so right there, you got the two parties in the United States. You know, you people respect the Democratic thing, you can talk to them. They're a Republican, you know, bring up the Reagan daughter piece. You know, so I mean, so I think through those kind of things, so that the message can be catered to who I'm talking to. You know, so I can communicate with them. You know, and just having that level of being able to communicate cross, and this is more just my personal thing, but to be able to communicate cross cultural boundaries and cross dialectical boundaries, you know, in different lifestyles and stuff. But overall, it's really comes down, you know, you live this thing. If you see, there's some of the videos I put out that are more fun, that are, you know, like the puppets rapping, or there's the other puppet video where they're talking about, you know, don't eat, you know, don't put it in your mouth, you know, like that kind of, because I kind of got this, yeah, I got this little childlike streak in me, you know, where I'm very amused by that kind of thing, and just something about those crazy looking puppets. Like, look at those things, they're hilarious to me. They're like these crazy looking puppets, and they're like, don't you put it in your mouth, don't you stuff it in your face. Like, I'm so entertained by that when I watch it. But you know, so but that's the kind of stuff that I think that I'm surprised sometimes doesn't even really take off as much. But I think those are the kind of things that some people in more mainstream thinking can take something away from, because it's not really threatening. You know, it's not, you know, me and Brother Air sitting up here kind of grilling on some of this information. It's sort of, it's like, you know, it's fun, and we have fun. You know what I'm saying? Like, is that sometimes you have to show people having fun. So sometimes we can get real intense, you know, and like, you know, be like down to business talking about these theories and this stuff, you know, because we're trying to evolve. But you know, we have a lot of fun. You know, I mean, me and Brother Air talking and doing stuff. I mean, you know, we're cracking jokes and you know, so we have a lot of fun. And so sometimes I like to try to show that, you know, in different ways, and that's something that's attractive to people, and people are like, yeah, let's go check that out, you know.
Yeah, man, that's real. You know, my experience with sharing the diet, through trial and error, it's real trial and error. But the key for me has actually been, like, the challenge is to say as little as possible. Like, that's just depending, like, based on how my mind works, how I share things. My challenge is to say as little as possible. Because just like you said, it's like you walk into the room and you have this vibration, and people gravitate to it. But the minute you start talking about, like, yeah, like, I'm into the mucusless diet and stuff, it all shifts.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, you know, so the way to negate that, or to make that not happen, is to really, like, get them to the point where they're asking you questions, and you just keep saying as little as possible. You know what I mean? And every once in a while, it's like you'll say something that really turns on a switch. and that person will like really be like, oh snap, like he has something, or like he really knows something. You know, that's something I've been surprised with is just reading the Mucusless Diet and practicing it. Like I get so much respect from people just based on like the things that I say. You know what I mean? I'm not the most educated person on everything, but when I talk about some of the stuff with health, like the people around me are like, wow, like that's really logical. It's really making sense. Um, you know, and so like let's say you have somebody who's struggling with some health issues, uh, and they'll just start telling you like, oh, I'm so tired and I feel fatigued and all this stuff, and you're just like, oh yeah, you know, I know what you mean, and uh, you know, I used to really suffer from that too, and I started like having smaller breakfasts, and I started having like maybe some fruit for breakfast and maybe a salad for lunch, and then I'll have my heavy foods for dinner. Like I won't talk about mucus forming foods necessarily. I might not talk about meat. I might just say, yeah, you know, I just tend to save my heavier stuff for dinner and have a smaller breakfast, and like I felt a lot better during the day. And they're like, oh wow, you know, that makes sense. And then they start talking to you, and eventually it gets to the point where you can give some advice, like, you know, they might come
And that,
like,
right, and turn them
yeah,
on, because my whole goal was
turn them
always to
on. That's what
just
I
turn them
mean.
on
That's
to
what I mean.
the book. Like if I can inspire them to
Exactly.
read the book, you know, and I used to because I used to hand out copies. I mean, years ago,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I probably bought several hundred copies of the book and then just ended up handing them out for free to people, you know, because I just really wanted them to have this information. And but yeah, so at the end of the day,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
like, you
real.
know,
You know.
if I can talk about it enough and then leave, like I ain't gonna tell it all, but it's just like because at a certain point you give them something and they have to give something back, and their giving back is just, you know, they got to do some work too. So
Yeah, exactly,
if
exactly.
I
You
can
know,
give you the outlet, the overview, and like Tony was talking about the way you kind of do that, where there's
you
ways that you
start
can
talking
talk
about like
about
the
it.
no breakfast plan, you know, and so like with me, it's like I might frame it as like the no breakfast plan, but then I might say like, well, you know, I practice the Mucusless Diet Healing System, and this book kind of talks about like having a smaller breakfast. So here you go, you know, here's the book, and you just like put it on their lap.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
might not even tell them it's vegan or whatnot. You just give them the book, like, uh, and so that's one way. But it's really all about like reading the situation, like
yeah.
you know what you want to do. Like, do you have a year? Do you have a year to make an example with this person, or do you have 5 minutes? You know, it's that kind of thing. And then it's like you have different tactics based on how much time you really have to show an example. You know, because if it's 5 minutes, you don't have this the same time as if it's a coworker and they see you eating fruit every day for lunch. You know what I mean? And they actually see the living example. That's
Yeah.
different. Like if it's a 5 minute thing or you know a short brief meetup, then all you really have is time to give them the book or make the suggestion like check out mucusfreelife.com, or you know you just have time to make the suggestion. But in other cases you really have a time to be a living example of the diet, and in those cases the people can actually start wanting the information. Like that's something that I try to understand myself is how do you get somebody to actually crave this? Like, I want that. You know what I mean? That's
Right.
so, and that's the example because just somebody might see you eating fruit for dinner and they're just like, what the hell? You know what I mean? And they're like, how am I eating this big pasta with chicken and all this, and that person is eating it like 4 oranges? You know what I mean? Like, how does that even happen? Um,
Right.
so you know, so that's a process of just like being able to live the example, but definitely it's key to get the book in there somehow, you know what I mean? And what I'm talking about is like how do you frame it so that when they get the book, they actually want to read it, you know, because people think they know what veganism is. They think they know about diets. They think they know about health. You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah, and
if,
no, and there's a, and then
people are
we
gonna be
come
like,
back
no,
to
I'm
what we
not
were.
reading this. You know what I mean?
Well, then it comes back to what we were talking about again about there's power in having the courage to be open about your lifestyle. So if you have
True.
something like social media and you're in something like the Arnold Air Forum and you post in there and you're not scared to have people see that you're a part of that group, then you might have had talked to that person and you post something, or you post something on your wall, you share one of a blog post or one of the memes or something like that, then you're putting these people in close proximity to this information. And like there's all the studies that they do about sometimes you have to be exposed to something, like in sales, they always say it takes 9 no's to get a yes, or people have to be exposed to something 7 to 10 times before they buy it. So it's very rare where somebody buys something the first time they ever are exposed to it. They and so again, we were talking about McDonald's. Take a lesson from them. They run hundreds of commercials every day on a lot of different channels and put ads out and all that kind of stuff constantly. Why? Because it becomes subconscious. It's just in the back of your mind. You don't even notice. You don't even think about it because it's there. It becomes a part of your reality, and then at some point, some activates. What I've always wanted to do is, as soon as somebody gets sick, they're going to remember a conversation they had with me. Like as soon as they start blowing their nose or something, they will now they're thinking of nothing but me. Like nothing but the Mucusless diet, because I hammer that into them, like I've hammered that concept of mucus in, and then when they start having a mucus elimination, now they're like, well, what was that book you were talking about, and so so what we got to do, we'll do a video sometime on just techniques, and just different ways that have worked for us in the past in different circumstances with sharing this information with people and stuff. And we use a lot to talk about there. But so what I'm gonna try to do now, there's a lot of things. We're gonna try to wrap this up here, because I know it's been hitting here for a minute. So there's a lot of questions that we didn't get to that we will get to next time. So I'm gonna make notes of everything and that we didn't address. There's a couple quick ones that I might be able to hit. So some of these other ones we'll hit another time. Let me see.
I got a piece, man. Somebody messaged me. We're not saying names and whatnot, but somebody wanted to know how Eric differentiated what's a mucus-forming food.
Well, and I was just about to say, I don't know if it's the same person.
It is. I think it is. Yeah.
Oh, okay. There's some Matthew put a couple messages here, and he's asking about about. Now I was surprised you said you hadn't read the book yet, which is interesting because you've been out. So if you don't. I don't know if you have the book, you just haven't read it yet. If you don't have a book, send a message to me, man. I'll send you one, because you've been a supporter for a long time, and you've been a part of, kind of like a leadership type of cat, that's been out there doing some things and stuff. So, so holler at me, man. We make sure it's you can read, unless there's been a reason that you wanted to not read things, or you kind of, some people have that where they're like, man, I don't want to, I just kind of want to not have things come into me, and just kind of, but either way, you holler at me about that. But as far as that goes, I mean, that's another one we can talk about. I mean, there's Eric tried to keep his stuff real simple in terms of the stuff in the Mucusless diet. Is the way it's explained is real simple, and it's hard for people that want something real complicated. Like sometimes I'll hear people say, if I talk about the boiling experiment that Eric talked about, where he'll take foods and put a little bit of water in a in a big pot, and then put that food in there, and then boil it, you know, at like 98 degrees around there for a period of time. And then if you cover that stuff up, or put it someplace where there's no oxygen, you can seal it, and then just let it sit. And then however many days later, open it up, and then you can see what happens. The meat, jellifies and turns into this slimy slime. Avocado is going to turn into that slimy slime. What else? I mean, just all the things that we know that we just say is a mucus forming, the starchy stuff. Anything if it's cooked down and then it's put, it's sealed like that, it turns into slime. Do that with grapes. What do grapes turn into when you boil them down and then you cover them up? They turn into syrup that's not slime, that is very easily eliminatable. So mucus-free foods, whether it's inside your body or if it's cooking it on a stove for a real long period of time, the mucus-forming foods degrade into slime. They degrade into this thick, viscous material that we call mucus. And we could also just call it slime. And mucus-free foods don't do that. Lettuce doesn't do that. Greens don't do that. And so that's what. So he just had that genius revelation. That's what he brings to the table. That's his genius. That that came out of a space of desperation. Because it came out of him, fasting, like trying to kill himself by not eating, and that turned into a fast that healed him of Bright's disease, because he had tried raw food. He had tried the fruit, that movement, fruitarian movements, that was all going on in the late 1800s in Switzerland and Germany. Nothing new about that stuff. And what the important piece brought to that was observing that these items create this sludge in the intestines. And I guess I will end up answering what was it with the very last question that I missed. There's a difference between analyzing the mucous membrane and the mucosa and the slime that's left behind from uneliminated, undigestible food substances. So you got your mucosa, and that's why it's almost like I would like to create a different words, because people will always associate, well, the body creates mucus and we need mucus, right? Well, the mucus, what we call mucus, that's produced by the lymphatic system, has nothing to do with you needing to eat mucus-forming foods to create that mucus. You already have that. You're born with the lymph system, and and when your body needs to eliminate, one of the ways that it ejects things from your system is in the form of what we call mucus. This clear, or sometimes green, sometimes brown if it's real degenerated, thick, slimy, what they say in Ghostbusters, with a weak electrochemical bond. Slime is what they're talking about. So that we are born of slime. And then that's a whole other philosophical discussion as to, is that normal? Because I have questions about that. But the reality is that's how we are now, and to the point where that element is actually a cleansing part of us, the lymphatic system, or like I like to call the mucus system, which is all about the elimination, of the mucus. Now, but it's still, that's different than if you eat some meat, or you eat whatever, some grains or an avocado or nuts or whatever it is, it's mucus forming, and it sits in your stomach and your intestines. If you're not regular, and you're not, you having the bowel movements, or you've never done enemas, and so you got 32 feet of impacted intestines, this stuff gets in here and it sits and it turns into this slime. And then we go back to that experiment, and the idea of that experiment, it's like, it's not supposed to be this deep science of where people are like, well, that's doing it on the stovetop, that's not like the conditions of the human body, so that's not it's not meant to be some scientific, where you go write a paper and submit your paper to a medical journal. Think of it like Eric's writing to you in very simple terms. So think of it as like a kindergarten experiment that's just supposed to give you a little bit of understanding, a little bit of logic, that you should be able to take the logic of that and apply it to what's going on inside your body. And then, if you're doing some enemas, if you're doing some work, you're going to see the slime coming out. And that's not slime that's based on, your lymphatic system didn't create that. Your lymphatic system did not create black slime that you get out when you start doing your lemon juice enemas. And these long ropes of things, that they didn't create that.
Yep.
And so we have
two different. That's a good point, man. Because it's like basically, if you start cleaning yourself up, you're gonna see the uneliminated waste and the slime. But once you start getting cleaner, you can tell basically what is pure food or mucusless clean food versus what is not. Like eat an apple and then eat a raw sweet potato, and you'll see why Eric said like raw vegetables are mucus forming. Raw starchy vegetables are mucus forming, and starchy vegetables in general are more mucus forming than starch-free, fat-free green leafy vegetables and fruits.
Yeah, because when you break it down, we're
simple
basically
logic.
Yeah, it's simple logic. People try to make way too much out of it. Eric, God, we can talk so long about this stuff. We need to wrap it up. But it's like, Eric, when one of my criticisms and something that I think was problematic, that Eric tried to do out of being collegial. He tried to bring in like the Ragnar Berg table, which was not perfectly in line with Eric's theories. But Eric, if you look at the way he wrote that chapter, he was just excited that somebody was halfway in correlation with what he was saying. That this guy was trying to do these chemical experiments with foods, and he was coming up with that certain foods are acid binding and other foods are acid forming. All pus and mucus forming foods eventually are acid forming foods. They're one and the same. All mucus and pus forming foods are acid forming foods. And so, but the problem with that was that with the Ragnar Berg table, there are things that are definitely pus and mucus forming that, according to his calculations, were acid binding. And that has confused many a reader of the original Mucusless Diet book that thought that list should be a mucus-forming versus mucus-free foods list. And it simply is not. And Eric explains that it's not, but because people don't read critically and carefully, they don't know. And it confused me, because you're getting into something, the first time you read it, it's just kind of overwhelming. Like, dang, this is all kind of, and so that's why that's one of the things that I really address in a fairly a fairly intense way in the annotated version of the Mucusless Diet. But so that's what it is. I mean, it is after years and years of working with people and all that, it became clear that things that starchy things, and because you basically had like, if we were to break it down, here is what causes mucus and or pus: starch, fat, or pus, which is what dead animal flesh, as it hits the oxygen, or if it's dead, it's tissue, and part of that tissue is going to be dead blood, and pus by definition is like dead blood, dead tissue. So that's why we say it's pus, and you eat that, pus forming. I mean, it's like these pus pockets, and that's the worst stuff that you can put in your body. Bloodborne secretions. So the milk, pus forming, the milk of an animal, and that's not human, because human milk, chemically is very different. It's closer to fruit, like fruit juice, with just a little bit of fat content in it than it is cow milk. I mean, come on, cow milk is something that's supposed to sort of slow down the elimination of a 100-pound calf, not an 8 or 6-pound human baby. And so so the milk that we call it milk, but the juice that comes out of a human is it's like a tiny bit of fat content in it, but it's nowhere near the amount that's in cow milk. And you'll notice what I said. I said this aid in stopping the elimination. From our perspective, it's not about nutrition. It's not about, okay, well, this baby needs to drink this to get this nutrition. It's slowing down its elimination. That baby is transitioning. We could learn from that baby. We could learn a lot about of transitioning in and out of liquidarianism. Because a baby it starts off a breatharian and then becomes liquidarian when they start drinking, and they have to transition. Do they go to solid foods overnight, or do they spend a year, sometimes 2 years, transitioning from liquid to purees to solid food? What did that baby do? It transitioned. Right. And what do? We transition babies into pus and mucus eating. We have to give them enough filth so that they can be transitioned properly into the filthy diets that we eat. Because if they didn't transition into that, they would die. If you didn't give your baby that Similac and all that stuff, where like the second ingredient is high fructose corn syrup, like this is supposed to be the great formula that's supposed to take the place of human breast milk if the female can't do it. Like that's what and you look at these ingredients and half of the words you can't say, and you don't know what the stuff is, and the second thing says corn syrup or sugar or something. And that's what you're giving your kid. You are properly transitioning your child to be able to one day eat Taco Bell and McDonald's, And but if you don't want to transition your child to eat like that, you don't have to. But the problem is, like you in order to properly transition your child, you have to be a master of transition yourself, or at least be a practitioner and be on the road. And then when you understand how your body works, you will better be able to, control the transition of another being, that's under your care. And so that's. Let's see how we do that. We go way off into all these, as they call it, discursive discussion. And so that's that. I mean, let's see what else. So how did he find out each maybe? Because I mean, that's like I said, you have starch, anything that's starchy, anything that is this fat content, and anything that is of dead animal, of bloodborne origin. The bloodborne origin is pus forming, and plant-based fats and plant-based starches are mucus forming. And then you have the category of acid forming, which I kind of things that don't necessarily leave behind mucus, but are not alkaline, are basically toxic or sort of poisonous. And so I created another category that I call acid forming, where I put like the vinegars and that kind of all your ketchups and all that kind of stuff in that kind of category. But again, some of these things can be used in the transition, in the context of the transition, and that's the other thing. It gets into how you got to look at those kind of lists, because it's not like a do not eat list and an eat list. I actually created a list that's practical that you can find on the blog, and it's basically like, this is the foods that I like to use, mucus forming and mucus free foods. And so we're gonna wrap this up one more time. I talked about this earlier. If anybody new came, I will show you the code one more time. Whoops. Oh, slow here. So I got for the folks that see this in the next day, if you go to mucusfreelife.com and you want to get a consultation with me, this is the coupon code, live video. So when you're at the checkout, you put live video and you'll get 50% off of the already discounted price of what I got there. So if you just were wanting to get just an hour, you want to talk to me for an hour and kind of go over your specific situation, and I can give a lot better advice when I know your background and I know kind of where you're coming from and what you're trying to do, what your aspirations are. Then go ahead, you throw that in there, and come and have a talk, and we can get down into some things. And so yes, I want to thank all of you for tuning in and watching. And this is what he's long with. We always set out to try to keep them brief, and then they just there's so much to talk about, a lot of good questions out there, and a lot to say. We both got a lot to say on these things, and passionate about this whole process. And so that's what's needed. We need to we need to want to get ourselves together and do whatever we can, by any means necessary, by any rational means necessary. Right. We get going on this process and really try to get ourselves together. So I want to thank everybody for your questions. Like I said, if there's questions that I didn't really address, I'm gonna try to forward some of those over to the next time. Take notes, and so yeah, we'll do that. So you have any last thoughts, final thoughts there, Tony?
Just same thing as usual, man. I'm loving the Arnold Ehret Forum, and anybody who's watching this who isn't a part of the Professor Arnold Ehret's Mucusless Diet Healing System Forum on Facebook, if you're on Facebook, I suggest getting on there, because we get real deep into a lot of these topics as well, and then they show up on things like this, So just check on in and share your story, and let's just keep doing this work, because it's very important. Yeah.
Yes.
Peace, everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. So I thank Tony, of course, and until next time, we will stay tuned. There's gonna be some interesting stuff happening here very, very soon. So until next time, peace, love, and breath.